This is just a quick remarks before handing over the meeting introductions to our hosts. But firstly, to say thanks to all of you that have made it here to the room and who've joined us online for your patience. We're going to start the meeting now, and I'll introduce Jean-Michel of the Institut Bachelier, who's graciously provided us this meeting space, and also to Miroslav, who's organized the online meeting. Thank you very much, Miroslav. So over to you, Jean-Michel.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Glad to see you and, well, to see you on the video at Institut Bachelier. Well, especially today, One Planet Summit happens to be, well, it's not very close, I would say, for some of you who travel already, but it's a great day for us in Paris, and I hope that our meeting will be another plus in this great day. So by roundtable, I'm not sure everybody knows everybody. For sure, I don't know everybody. You mind? I don't know how to do it with the video, but what do you think?
Yeah, we will. I would suggest we have first the round of introductions here, and then we give it the opportunity for them also to speak. I can turn then on the volume of the computer, and at the same time I have to turn off the microphone here so that there's no feedback, but we will manage it. So, but I would suggest that we start here with the round of introduction.
Excuse me, could they confirm that it's okay for the audio part?
Yeah, okay, let's ask. Please, but I would suggest that we start here with the round of introductions. Could somebody say a few words from the virtual participants? Okay, let's ask. Please.
Good morning or good afternoon. You've got Joseph Pallant here from Brinkman Climate in Vancouver, Canada.
Thank you very much. Yes, now we go.
Would you like to go first?
Okay. No. Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm Miroslav Polzer from the International Association for the Advancement of Innovative Approaches to Global Challenges, based in Austria. We are working on multi-stakeholder engagement in climate action, non-state actors engagement according to the Paris Agreement. We have a focus on youth and climate entrepreneurship models that could use blockchain technology for incentivization of youth climate action. And we want to connect this small project of young people all around the world with the big big climate finance, and that we think that blockchain has a big potential there. We've had an exhibit on blockchain for climate action with the Russian Carbon Fund at COP23 and some other networking initiatives already with Sven and with Nick and others. So.
Hello. Is this loud
yes,
enough, you think?
It's loud enough. I can see that the audio signal is going up and down.
Okay. Yeah, hi, I'm Carl Schultz, and I'm with a new initiative called Adaptation Ledger. And I'm sort of glad that I'm one of the first people to speak, because I'm probably, maybe not, the only one representing a group focused on climate adaptation. What we're looking to do, and what we've been working on now for the past 18 months, and I'll let you know who's involved a little bit later, but we're combining distributed ledger technology and other disruptive technologies with smart standards, meaning standards beyond the process that many of you are perhaps familiar with, how they're developed or maldeveloped today, and a metric called the Vulnerability Reduction Credit, the VRC, which is a unified universal metric that quantifies the outputs strongly correlated with the outcomes of climate adaptation projects. So what we're looking to do is synergize these three broad elements into a system that can help solve for the variety of MRV, implementation, target setting, and first amongst equals, perhaps finance challenges that adaptation, the poor child in the climate game has. So I'll leave it at that, except to say we're the people involved in adaptation ledger include Ira Feldman, who is involved in a lot of adaptation standards work and sustainability work, and Tom Bowman, who I think you know. So that's what we're about. Sorry for the lengthy one.
Thanks, Carl. Over to you, Stefan.
Yes, Stéphane Bozin. So I'm coordinating with Patrice this French initiative called Climate Change, which started, let's say, a bit more than 6-8 months ago, with the idea to drive and support research on how blockchains, architectures, on protocols can potentially support the ambitions of the Paris Agreement. We've been specifically working on registries, carbon registries, by replicating the French National Registry with Caisse des Dépôts team, which actually handled that national registry. And not only obviously replicating the functionalities of the French registries, but also trying to meet the expectations of countries that do not have any registries. Most of them do not have any registries. And to see blockchain as a potential solution for building up the MRV process, registry, and a stronger and robust NDCs for these developing countries. We've been acting, as I said, together with the Caisse des Dépôts and also an institution which is a think tank, which is part of the French Development Bank and the Caisse des Dépôts, which is called Institut for Climate Economics. And
for everybody, if you see here that there are only 2 or 3 of the green lights, please speak up a little bit louder, so we will have a good transmission.
We'll add a few things because I'm partner with Stéphane in the initiative he just mentioned. I'm Patrice Geoffron. I'm the head of the research center at the University Paris-Dauphine, with a partner of the ILB Institut Bachelier, and that research center is specialized in energy and climate change economics, with a good expertise in, let's say, carbon pricing, smart grids, and the convergence between ICTs and energy and electricity especially. And I've shared during the COP23 a beer with Tom, Stéphane, and Jean-Michel, where the idea of meeting in Paris and organizing that kind of coalition appeared to be a good idea.
Again, Institut Bachelier, very glad to see you here. And just a few words about Institut Bachelier. It's a research network. We have around 350 researchers, so you cannot see them here. There are some of them here, but generally speaking, they are around the globe, and we fund sponsored research through, let's say, the finance industry, banking industry, insurance, asset management, and all in all, we have around close to 20 million euros of sponsored research each year, not only on the environment or energy transition, but we are pretty strong in as well in the digitization and what we call digital disintermediation in the banking system and banking industry, as well as longevity, so the idea of living a century. So just these few words to say that, I'm sure our initiative could well enrich as well, talking to other departments here, especially the digital department, the data lab, which is located on the third floor here. It's a network. I mean, you're welcome here every 24/7. You're welcome here at everyone. It's open.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. My name is Nick Beglinger. I'm here to represent two organizations. One is the Climate Ledger initiative that I have initiated at the beginning of this year, and which is a partner with 3 other organizations: the Life Climate Foundation of Liechtenstein, the Gold Standard Foundation in Geneva, and the Swiss company Infras, with a 30-year track record of working with the UN and the World Bank. I've set up Climate Ledger in order to be active at the intersection of blockchain and climate in a broad sense. Our first activity is the so-called research track, for which we have been funded by the government of Switzerland and Liechtenstein in order to develop a research agenda and a mapping of stakeholder activities in the first phase, and we have now entered the second phase with another bunch of countries to expand on the research agenda and to move over to the innovation track, where there shall be an innovation agenda for use cases. Also, I represent my foundation, CleanTech 21. It has a 10-year track record in Zurich. I set this up just about 10 years ago. I still get some LinkedIn contacts congratulating me and making me remember how old I am already with the 10-year foundation I've set up. The foundation has different projects with an emphasis on carbon pricing. And in the blockchain climate space, we have organized the Hack for Climate that run parallel to COP23. This has included a very rigorous selection out of 1,300 blockchain developers globally into 100 that we selected and invited to Bowman, and have held a 4.5-day hackathon this COP, with very cool results in the energy mobility and forest management space, particularly with different ventures that are now being accelerated into sort of more full-grown babies that should benefit.
One second. Do we have a problem?
There looks like there could be a problem.
It's a problem with the projection to the screen here, but it's running on the Google Hangout is running. So
Okay. I think you're next, Jeffrey.
I'll be very quick, very brief. My name is Jeffrey Riggs. I work on a project called Power, and we're lucky enough to be one of the co-founders of Power. Louder?
yes, please.
Okay, I'll start.
You cannot see the. So.
Thank you. My name is Jeffrey Riggs. I'm here today supporting a project called Power. And I won't go into much details about it because one of the co-founders of the project is here, and I think it's his baby. And he can tell the story a little bit better than I can. So I'll just go and tell you.
Bonjour.
Yeah, I can proceed, right?
Yes, you can.
My name is Arturas. I'm co-founder of Power. Thanks, Tom, for inviting us here. We have built the first blockchain-based green energy trading platform, which allows renewable energy producers to raise capital by issuing their own energy tokens, which represent real energy, which means that we are innovating existing power purchase agreement market. Since we are connected with the grid system and with the renewable energy producers, we can offer the most transparent emission accounting system run on blockchain. Currently, we are doing a pilot project which will tokenize all nationwide electricity in one of our partner countries. And the team is led by the people who built the first smart grid nationwide in Estonia, a smart metering system. Together with the help of United Nations, we have offered our software solution to be open source to any country that wants to implement transparent accounting system on blockchain.
Okay. I'm Jack McClure from Unit in Action Camp on Sustainable Development. I'm coming on the invitation of Miroslav, which I meet on COP21 concerning youth and climate. But now we are working with people in US but other countries on this problem of it's a problem because it's not enough communication also about the SDGs, and also we have a project of blockchain and SDGs today and how to work with the enterprise first and after all the people today. So it's just the beginning because it's a huge project to bring up this data. And France is just doing now, and it's going to make at world efficiency kind of projection of the data of this.
Hello, everyone online and everyone in the room. My name is Tom Bowman. I'm one of the organizers of this meeting, having had a few beer meetings at COP23 with a few of you, in coming to an agreement that we should convene a meeting in person and online to talk about cooperation and share more information about each other so that we could identify ways that we could work together on a variety of issues of common interest. I first started getting involved with blockchain in early 2015, and it was at COP21 here in Paris that we had a side event on blockchain, next generation standards, and other digital solutions for climate and MRV. And since then, have become involved in a number of blockchain activities. One actually in a blockchain technology company that incorporates a number of digital innovations based out of the United States, mostly involved in the energy sector and commodities markets. In addition, I'm a researcher at the Blockchain Research Institute that is founded by Don Tapscott. There's about 70 different researchers, and I'm involved with leading up the climate and sustainability research, which I've been doing for about 6 months now. And then more recently, I'm from Canada, and the Canadian government has shown a lot of leadership in supporting blockchain, and involved in a couple of projects that they funded to deploy blockchain along with MRV innovations in the Pacific Alliance countries, which I believe now is referred to as the America's Climate Platform, as it's expanded beyond the Pacific Alliance countries, and also on next generation MRV governance, governance being an important issue for blockchain generally speaking, but also for climate as well, and that intersection has generated a lot of interest in how we can provide a supporting foundation for blockchain to grow in a way that is beneficial, accelerate that growth so that we can realize blockchain's benefits in the climate sustainability space.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ian Ponce. I'm from the UNFCCC. I work in the Global Climate Action Team, where we're supporting and mobilizing the non-state actors and climate action implementation in general to support enhanced ambition by countries. One of the things I'm doing is supporting the so-called high-level champions in their role of being an interface between the real-world action and the whole negotiation process. A little bit else in my background, I guess I was working in our executive Paris's office in the lead up to Paris and working with the so-called Paris Action Agenda and also Marrakesh Partnership. And one of my roles was leading the development and launch of the NASCA platform, which is a platform was launched before Paris to showcase non-state action and to lead up to Paris to increase momentum. And I guess now, post-Paris, we're looking in a world of how we can support implementation, and one of the things we're looking at is regards to innovation and how can we support the implementation on the ground, and in particular in this sphere with blockchain is perhaps look at how increasing the credibility of some of this action, how we can provide evidence that implementation is actually happening, not just the commitment. So leave it there. Thank you.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Martin Frick, also with the UN Climate Secretary. Just very recently joined 6 weeks ago as Senior Director for everything that's basically on the implementation and climate action side, so working with Ian and you, working with Pasamba, and others. You know, since all of the climate process is basically about disruptive change and transforming the global economy, I started to become interested in blockchain very recently and understand very little about it, but enough to understand that this is a supremely interesting technology and that it opens possibilities also for peer-to-peer action and connecting even smaller scale investments from OECD countries to very small scale investments in developing countries that I'm really interested in what you are discussing, and I hope to educate myself a bit in this meeting. I can only stay until 4 o'clock, so if I sneak out at one point, that's by no means an expression of disinterest, but I have my wonderful colleagues here following as well.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody.
Could you please speak louder?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Masamba Joy. I'm also from the Secretariat. I'm leading the Regulatory Development Unit in the Secretariat. This is the unit dealing with the development of standard and methodology. And under the Global Climate Action, I'm dealing with the private funding from the private sector. So we are very much interested in how blockchain can be used to help the successful implementation of the Paris Agreement, and recently we were in touch with most of you. And as it was mentioned by our Executive Secretary, in terms of collaboration, we would like to go one step beyond what we used to do. So being not only the organization that collaborates with others, but also an organization that facilitates collaboration among the different players. This is why we were very keen to see in the area of application of blockchain to climate action, all the different players being together, so that we try to find a structured and more strategic approach of using this innovative technology to help the successful implementation of the Paris Agreement. So I think having a space where the different organizations can collaborate while having a window to express themselves is very good things. So thank you, Stefan, for hosting here, and thank you, Tom, also for pushing a lot to have this meeting happening. We are strongly looking forward to have this collaboration in place. And we have already some ideas of project on the table. I told you, Tom, that we have been approached by the Green Climate Fund. They would like to cooperate with us, and they took. And they wanted to start cooperating on some very concrete subject. So they took one project from their pipeline of project, and they would like to explore with us how we could use blockchain to support that project. So we are really looking forward to have a broad collaboration of actors in this area of blockchain for climate action.
Thanks, Masamba. I think we go to the online
Yes,
participants.
let's go to the online participants, and let's start with Alistair. I'm turning the volume on and our microphone off. Alistair?
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Hello? Hello?
We can hear you, but
Hello?
we have our microphone muted in order to avoid the feedback loop.
Oh, okay, good. So I'm not talking to my. Yeah, hello everybody. Good morning to our friends in California. Good afternoon to our friends in Europe, and good evening to our friends in Asia, wherever you are. My name is Alistair Mark. I've started the international core group on blockchain climate finance on LinkedIn sometime late last year. Together, people sharing the common spirit of blockchain, deployment of blockchain into climate applications together. And these lovely international core group of blockchain climate friends who are producing the world's first book on this topic, which is entitled Transforming Climate Finance and Green Investment with Blockchain. And the book, the writing process has been done, and it is now in production with Elsevier Publishing. The book will be released to the market sometime in first quarter and the new year. It's already available on Amazon for pre-orders. And I also have, I'm a founding member with Miroslav and Alexei Shotland, etc., of the Blockchain for Climate Network, which we were discussing at COP23, where I met some of you in person finally. And we haven't officially launched our network yet because we haven't got time to discuss our positioning. So for this meeting, of course, in principle, I am a huge supporter principle embedded in our MOU being discussed this afternoon. At this meeting, I positioned myself as a very good listener, and then would definitely consider all our discussions today when we have the chance to really discuss our plan at the for the Blockchain for Climate Network. Thank you.
Thank you, Alistair. Amy.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, good morning. I'm not sure if I'm appearing. It's super early here in California, and I'm with Noble Profit. I'm the founder of Noble Profit, which is committed to helping connect sustainable business and investment, providing basically business intelligence and matchmaking. We're developing a solution to help track and report UN SDG metrics. I had the privilege of joining the Hack for Climate, which was amazing. Thank you, Nick. And meeting several of you and working on ADAPT with Gold Standard, which we're in the process of polishing off and finishing. And the work that we're looking to do is how can we create accountability between corporate and investment groups? How can we help facilitate that relationship where we can allow folks like Gold Standard to qualify these commitments and create that trusted validation of these commitments. We see participating, there's a lot of wonderful people involved, and we are not in any way reinventing the wheel, but looking to see how can we facilitate this as quickly as possible so that we can onboard as many people as possible and recognize that the UN SDGs is a common language, finally, that everyone is embracing after many years of having a lot of different ways of looking at data and presenting data, which I think creates separation. So I'm very pleased about the UN SDG. It's actually made my life a lot easier in terms of technology programming, and look forward to collaborating with all of you. So thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Climate Coin next.
Hello, can you hear me? This is Frank from Climate Coin. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Tom, and thanks, Masamba, and hi, guys. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having us. and we are very happy to join you in this association, this coalition. Basically, from ClimateCoin, we were in Bonn in the SIF 17 in some panels, and we were in like a gold sponsor there. So we are at the moment working in our blockchain-based carbon credits trading portal with some agreements with big parties in the world. And at the same time, what we want to do with ClimateCoin and the basis of ClimateCoin, the origin is we are trying to democratize like the fight against climate change, and we want to use our coin, our brand to be able to show to the people that every individual must make something against this. And we are happy to join you guys to be able to see how we can help with our blockchain experts and our team. We are focused on doing this portal, on creating and launching it, and at the same time we are looking for these disruptive companies that we can find and that we can help them to make an exponential we say help to this problem, right? It would be our main goal would be to use blockchain technology to be able to engage these companies and to be able to make an exponential difference, right? So ClimateCoin, we could say it would be like a symbol for we want to become like a symbol for the individuals for the climate change. I know that is ambitious, but is the way we want to run it, and for that we have a multitask different projects that we want to achieve. And at the moment, we are running that one in blockchain with blockchain technology. One of our partners, 2050 Life Investments, that met you in Mexico, Masamba, Jose Lindo, that he's listening also. We are using virtual reality also to bring transparency to the investments for our investors. So we will be including this virtual reality technology in our portal, so everybody will be able to see where they are investing their money. And I think that this brings a lot of transparency, not only to the big investors, but for any individual that can see what we are doing, where we are putting the money they are depositing confidence in us, right? So at your disposal for any help, and I'm gonna be here all the meeting, and let's see how we can help. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Harini, next.
Hi everyone, can you hear me? Okay. I'm going to assume that's a yes. So I'm here representing Provenance today, and we're a blockchain startup, and we're based in London. We create digital tools to increase transparency within supply chains, and we help improve the traceability of the products as they move along the supply chain, all the way from producers through to consumers. We just joined the initiative today, so thanks to Tom for inviting us. So today essentially we'll be listening in mostly and looking to learn more about the opportunities and how Provenance can contribute to this initiative.
Thank you. Harini, Ilan, next.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ilan Mandel. I'm speaking to you right now from Israel, though I'm usually based in Venice Beach, California. I am the chief architect of SDG Systems, and I'm also the interim president of 300 by 2050. 300 by 2050 is a funding and coordination platform for climate restoration projects. Our focus is climate restoration. Our focus is to restore and reclaim a healthy climate with a focus on revert to 300 parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere by the year 2050. So if climate mitigation is about reducing emissions, climate restoration is mostly about capturing greenhouse gases from the atmosphere, as well as restoring and protecting the ice caps. It's clear that climate mitigation is not going to be enough. We also need climate restoration if we want to get back to a healthy climate. We announced this initiative in September, and we're planning to launch it in Q1 of next year, 2018. And we're excited to be involved and engaged with this group because we consider using blockchain for tracking the investment decisions, the due diligence process, and so on, to oversee and manage the flow of money within our ecosystem of climate restoration projects, and for MRV. I can say also that we're looking to potentially launch a similar portal that is going to focus on climate mitigation projects. So excited to be here and looking forward to this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ilan. Ingo, please.
Yes, hi, good evening from Bangkok. Ingo Pool from South Pole. I come from climate policy. COP1, 23 years ago was my first COP. I've been very much involved in design of market-based instruments and use of market-based instruments ever since. South Pole is a large player in the voluntary carbon market. I also had the pleasure of telling Christiana Figueres what blockchain is. I think I was the first to do that. So this is how kind of like new this is to the process. My interest in this group is very much on using distributed ledger technology to address governance issues. I think we now live in a world where we have a coexistence of pledges from a range of entities. Some are countries who pledge NDCs, but we have non-state actors, the private sector, people, cities, regions that are also pledging. And we need to find a way of getting them onto the same playing field. And I think blockchain technology is the only way to do this. And I think it's kind of like the first piece that we need to get right, like how can we use the technology to solve governance in a good way? And use cases is something that we can build on top of that, right? That comes later. Equally important, can start in parallel to some extent, but priority, in my view, is on governance. Thank you.
Thank you, Ingo. Joseph, please.
Good day, everyone. Thanks for convening this call and meeting. This is great. I'm calling in from Vancouver, Canada, and I represent Brinkman Climate. We develop emission reduction projects and help smart climate policy succeed. And so I am coming at the blockchain space from a climate space, was part of the team that submitted the world's first CDM reforestation methodology back in 2004. So I've progressed through CDM realm, through to voluntary carbon realm, and now through to some of the provincial and state level compliance offset programs in North America. And so trying to bring this sort of the space or different pieces of the space to the blockchain, seeing a lot of amazing blockchain initiatives that could really use the help of all the people in the room and on the phone to really get that climate part correct. I have been running a Twitter feed, Blockchain for Climate, which is at Block4Climate, spelling out 4. So please join there if you're on Twitter. And I think seeing all the pieces of the ecosystem come together, all of the people around the table, bringing platform solutions, bringing technological solutions, bringing an understanding of what the key outstanding issues are around the climate endeavor that could be solved by blockchain is one of the outcomes that I hope to see from all of this. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Joseph. René, please.
Yes. Hi, guys. René Velasquez here from CBL Markets. Can you hear me okay? Yes, we hear you well.
Great. So I'm like a number of the other previous speakers. I'm also kind of late to the party for blockchain, but having had a conversation with Tom and a number of other sort of key stakeholders within the carbon markets, it's become sort of obviously pressing on me that this is a mega trend. We need to get ahead of it, and we need to be engaged with the developments of the distributed ledgers technologies and other applications that will sit on top of the blockchain. As a matter of background, CBL Markets is we develop, design, and operate exchanges in different environmental markets. So currently, we operate across carbon markets, including both voluntary, which I head up, and my team. We also operate across compliance carbon markets, including the California markets, RGGI as well. Outside of carbon, we focus on renewables. We have a US REC market that's just recently launched, Australian RECs, and we continue to expand that. And we've just made an acquisition of a water exchange.
It is not getting to the project. Sorry, René, we have a problem here.
That's okay.
We cannot hear you. We have to call a technician. So I would
just made an acquisition of
suggest it is not go back to the project room here, and once the technician fix it, then we
no problem
with René and Tony and Joseph the final contributions from the. So I would sorry.
Microphone in the room.
Yes, it is switched on. You can see the green.
He's back.
Yes.
Very poor.
Yeah. I'm so sorry. It's the system here. So,
can continue.
Yeah, you can continue here. They hear you on the hangout. If you could ask them.
Okay, well, thanks to everyone thus far for making the introductions in the room and online. We'll continue with the introductions as soon as we can get the equipment fully functional here. And in the meantime, just to carry on with our meeting agenda, which was circulated in advance, I'd just like to say a few words before inviting others to make additional comments related to the key points. In the various meetings that we've had amongst participants in the room, and I'd like to just say I think I've tallied about 13 people in the room and approximately 10 online, so that's a pretty good showing for this first relatively impromptu meeting. So thanks again to everyone for participating and providing information in advance, which will get circulated once we have all of that information compiled. So for this meeting today, one of the objectives is to get an opportunity to discuss issues of common interest, whether those are cooperating on activities that more than one of us are concentrating on, whether that's to pool resources and otherwise use our limited resources more efficiently to get more work done on a faster timeline with the objectives or goals of supporting in as responsible manner as possible blockchain's integration into the climate system in terms of MRV and more broadly speaking carbon markets, carbon pricing, adaptation, and SDGs that are also related. And so we are individually and jointly organizing meetups throughout the year, sometimes such as at COP23, organizing meetups that unfortunately conflicted with that limited schedule. And given the great interest amongst everyone to be able to engage with one another and network and find ways to collaborate, how we might organize our schedules around meetups, whether it's this group of growing participants wanting to cooperate with the larger stakeholder groups that we are working with, as well as looking at new ways that we could collaborate, link up projects, do new work together, we could do more as teams than that we could individually. And as part of the preparations for this meeting, many people have expressed interest to manage issues around blockchain that are causing some concerns amongst the larger stakeholder community. Whether that is, for example, the carbon footprint that's associated with certain blockchain technologies, and what are we doing about it? And to communicate to stakeholders that we are aware of these challenges, in fact, coming up with strategies on how to best address the negative issues, such as energy consumption being disproportionate to the benefit, as well as improving blockchain's cost effectiveness and other benefits that it's intended to achieve. And really communicating that to our stakeholders so that they understand that we recognize the importance of good governance in terms of blockchain's application in climate and sustainability, just like the larger blockchain sector is right now working very focused on implementing the governance infrastructure for blockchain as it applies beyond climate and sustainability. And so a couple of documents that were prepared as discussion pieces to work on, one being a declaration of shared goals and principles amongst all of the organizations that we support and would like to see more uptake across the application of blockchain for climate and sustainability. And also something of a framework agreement that would help us continue our path forward on some form of cooperation. And so very much a starting point for discussion, and looking forward to that discussion, people's ideas on how we could improve how we go forward together. Still need a few minutes to...
I think we could try again with René.
Okay.
René, can you hear us?
Hi guys, yes, I can hear you loud and clear. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please continue.
Good.
Thanks for waiting.
Not a problem. Tom, yeah, absolutely 100% agree with you. And obviously continuing from the conversation we had the other day. Maybe I could just begin again and give a very brief background. CBL Markets, who we are. We're an exchange provider. We develop and operate exchanges across a number of different environmental markets, operating in carbon, renewables, and water. I head up our voluntary carbon markets business, have clients globally. And my sort of interest in terms of blockchain is I'm interested in the potential that this technology has in terms of transforming the industry for carbon, but I'm also cognizant of potential risks that might come with disrupting technologies such as blockchain. And so I want to ensure, and following on from what Tom said, is the credibility aspect that has been built up in the markets since inception. And so, for example, the development of standards, obviously the traceability aspect that blockchain brings, but not to disrupt essentially the registry architecture and how that integrates. I'm also keenly interested in the potential for blockchain in the MRV side of things. I've been working quite closely within the aviation sector in building capacity for airlines as they prepare for CORSIA, which is their emissions trading system that starts in 2020. And I think that there could be some good potential for this type of distributed ledger technology to help in the MRV component for emissions tracking and also tracking of their compliance obligations under that system. So I'm curious to find out more. I'm new to the space, so yeah, that's it. That's enough from me.
Thank you, René. Stefan, next.
Hello, everyone. This is Stefan from the CSCP in Germany. I'm based in Wuppertal. Yeah, I'm really happy actually to join this group. Our director, Michael Kuhn, he was part of COP21 and met some of you and with interesting discussions. And yeah, for some time we have the blockchain discussion going around here because we're on a quite similar track as many of you are. The CSCP, in short, is the acronym for Collaborating Center on Sustainable Consumption and Production. We were originally founded by the UNEP. And yeah, we are driven really by the mission to mainstream sustainability, where climate change is a very important part of it. We call ourselves a think and do tank, which means we develop and identify solutions, and then our main work pretty often is to build partnerships, build strong alliances to get the implementation, to get something interesting into the mainstream, be it working with large retailers, with consumer goods companies, to see really what is their big market potential and how you can use it for sustainability. If we look to the blockchain world, there's a number of interesting things that really inspire us currently, which is, of course, the transparency aspects. There's the big need for companies to look much more deeply into their value chains to see what is going on. You have sustainability standards, you have labels that actually need more accurate information what's going on in the supply chain. It's very important to see what is the potential about creating new markets, be it peer-to-peer markets, be it microtransaction markets, be it crowdfunding. So anything that is driving behavior change, because this is one of the large aspects we are looking into. We are looking into sustainable business models and products and services, but also finally into behavior change. How can we really incentivize people to change behavior towards more climate friendly? And of course, this could also be a means to drive policy efficiency, to really target transactions, subsidies to climate friendly behavior. Yeah, and this is basically it. So we are really driven like by alliances. Normally we work a lot with companies, with governments, with NGOs, with academia. Have a staff of about 50 people from around the world here based in Germany, and very thrilled to be part of this group today. Thank you. Guys, we cannot hear you anymore. I don't know if you can hear us.
Yes, now we are back. Yeah, sorry. There was one for a very short time, and he left. Rowney also. He's not anymore.
Okay. Yeah. I'll just note for the group that I received a couple of emails from people who had to call in who weren't connected by the computer. And that includes Tawny Berger from Expansive out of the United States and David Greeno from PricewaterhouseCoopers out of Canada. Or there might be others.
And for information, this hangout will be also available as video on demand later on. So. Yeah, it's zero budget technology, but very effective.
Well, thanks again to everyone for the roundtable introductions and the information that has been partly shared. It's still coming in so that people get a good sense. I think the introductory survey two-pager has been very informative for myself, and I hope everyone else as well, in terms of what the participants are doing in regards to geographic activities within climate, broadly speaking, whether it's MRV, mitigation, adaptation, or even SDGs and so on, as well as how they, initially at least, think that they could participate in a collaborative effort, whether that's contributing to research or pilot projects, capacity building, and et cetera. And so I think that gives us a really good basis of where we have a lot of areas that we could work together, or we might have gaps that we might seek additional members as well to cover off the broad scope of potential applications. And so one next step might be, other than sharing that information as a bit of a consolidated overview of what the different participants are doing, is if we were to transfer that into some form of MOU that then links to some type of a work program of next steps on how we might jointly or in smaller groups, if there's particular focus areas for participants, that we might proceed in the next coming weeks and months. How does that sound? As one small step amongst others that we hope to accomplish today. Seems good? Sounds good.
Yep.
Sounds good.
Yes.
Well, in that regard, Samba, would you like to?
Yeah, just to add one aspect that in my view is very important to find why we are trying.
Could you please speak a little louder, otherwise they don't hear it.
Trying to bring all the different players together. So one of the things that we are trying to avoid work and to try to avoid overlap we know that we have very limited resources. We know that we have to act very quickly and swiftly when it comes to trying to address climate change. So it means that if we want to take the maximum benefit out of our activities, we need to find a way to work in a structured manner and be in a structured and coordinated manner. So it means that it would be useful to know what is currently available, what are the needs that need to be done in terms of application of blockchain in climate action, what is currently available, what is the gap, and how together we can work in trying to fill the gap. So it does not mean that all the organizations need to be tied together, but I think what could be really interesting is to explore how far we can all together collaborate while leaving space for each organization to do its own things. But wherever it makes sense, work together. I think we really need to find a way to work together.
Thank you. Thank you. Nick, please go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to just add to that briefly. I think when we embark in this effort of trying to coordinate, which I think is absolutely needed, I think it's still very important to quickly remember where we're at right now. And this group can be described, in my view, as the group that is basically at the intersection of climate and blockchain. Right? That's the space that we could mutually define. And if you think a bit about this space, I'm of the opinion that we just have to realize that we have on the one hand climate, which is the world's biggest challenge and the huge space, and there's 7,000 people in the summit today, and there were 20,000 in the COP a month ago. So it's a big field, and there are many actors. And on the other hand, we have blockchain, which is an emerging technology. We should all call it distributed ledger technologies, of which one application is blockchain, because there are others, and particularly when it comes to energy saving issues and stuff, those others become very important. So let's call it distributed ledger technologies and the climate. And if you think about these two fields, these are huge fields, and they are fields that develop very rapidly. So we have to be very conscious of the fact that this group of players that sit around this table right now and that join us online, that's now sort of the pioneers in this space. But now we are experiencing a huge and rapid development in the amount of players that will be engaged. So for example, WePower, I think, is doing great work in energy and blockchain, but that field specifically includes worldwide over 50 players already. So when we think about how to best coordinate our efforts and to embark in cooperation, I think given the spaces I just tried to explain briefly, it's very important to A, make it very open for those who come after us, and B, make it very dynamic in the sense that, information of what we all do and where we would like to cooperate and which specific partnerships we seek, I, for example, see rather in an online digital form than in a paper-based MOU, in order to pay justice to the fact that it develops very quickly. And we have to remember that when we define issues like governance and address challenges like scalability or transaction costs or energy use, all issues that hundreds, if not thousands of people already are addressing, and that we should not duplicate that. Even on the governance issue of blockchain, Tom is surely aware that the tax gods have written to the World Economic Forum on how to do this, and there's many efforts going on. So we should look at our effort as being complementary to that and really focusing on this intersection and being really dynamic and open to those who come after us.
Thank you, Nick. Miroslav.
Okay, thank you. One question I would have to Masamba. You've had this call for partnership, for data partnership using distributed ledger technologies on the UNFCCC homepage. I've seen it. Could you report how the feedback has been? Did you get any partnership proposals?
We received a lot of requests for partnership, but as I mentioned, it has been so far done in a kind of ad hoc manner. Different organizations wanting to collaborate in bilateral mode with the UNFCCC Secretariat. And we felt that it would be much more productive to put all these organizations together and then to collaborate directly with the group of organizations rather than going for bilateral collaboration with the different organizations. So now our policy is to say each time that we receive this request for collaboration, we just tell them that there are players in this field that are trying to build something. If you want, you can join, and these things will be supported by the UNFCCC.
Very good. Yeah, please, Mr. Frick.
If I can maybe quickly comment. I think what's interesting for us to see, coming from a secretariat logic, we have a global instrument in place. We're working on the implementation of this instrument, which, strictly speaking, will only be kicking in 2020 when countries are defining the next round of that. So we are looking into providing the narrative that what is in the NDCs is in many parts already a reality, and that there's a very dynamic tech space which might anticipate some of the developments as we have seen the last 15 years. We have prices for renewable energy now that we thought we might be achieving in 10 to 15 years. So governments have always the tendency to make decisions and projections into the future on the basis of available technology. Here's a technology breakthrough that's coming online in breathtaking speed. And I would be interested also in the communication piece to have a group of experts who speak with authority and experience about what that means to some of our core businesses, like transparency, like climate services, offsetting Article 6, all of these different things. So I think one function of this group would actually be to communicate that back to negotiators, and for that we have instruments like the Marrakesh Partnership, or now this next year the Talanoa Dialogue would be coming in, because we would be interested in injecting this inspiration and energy of a newly emerging technology into the negotiators and inspire their efforts.
Now, to actually respond to it's almost the questions. To my view, I fully agree with Tom, with Nick actually on the need. I mean, we are asked to add to the principle, as you know, 2 or 3 of the principles, one being technology neutrality, which we think is important, not to be embarked on a specific protocol. And it's too early, and as Nick said, it's only emerging, and there will be plenty of new solutions coming in. The second one, I think, that topic that we have to address beyond carbon intensity of the blockchain is the issue of fraud and security. And the top issue, and I think what in our view is very much needed, and I think it will be truly interesting to get the feedback of the UNFCCC, is standardization. And it's a big word that you can use for many things, but if I can say one practical example of why standardization is needed in the scope of this project, of this coalition, is to avoid duplication of tokens for the same tons of carbons. Because I think beyond carbon intensity and the energy intensity of the blockchain, what can be extremely disruptive in terms of reputation for the blockchain is basically duplication of tokens for the exactly same tons of carbon emissions, whether it's emitted or avoided, in both situations. And I think if I can find one good reason to work on standardization, that will be the one. So I think there are many other reasons and other benefits to work on standardization, which is interconnection of initiatives, whether it's bottom-up or top-down initiatives. I mean, at the EMD, we are very much looking at sovereign registries, and we believe that what we've done with the French National Registry can be replicated by these developing countries for adopting emerging processes and building a registry and then robust indices. And we believe in the ability of such basically ecosystem to build trust and to attract financial flows, which is critical for these countries. But at the end of the day, integrity comes with a standard. If we need to avoid. I think if I could find on my side, one thing that we want to avoid altogether is to have deduplication of carbon, tons of carbon in the blockchain.
Yeah, I just wanted to add Nick's comment to be open, because what we saw when we started on a project, and most of the blockchain startups that want to innovate energy sector, they fail because they cannot get access to the critical infrastructure. So I also would like to add to the topic that we have to standardize requirements for the security. Once we start to standardize these requirements, we can get access to the infrastructure. But we cannot do that without having here utilities and holders of the critical infrastructure. And this path we chose with VPAR to work closely with Elring, transmission system operator in Estonia, that controls all data and infrastructure. Without having them on board, actually we cannot have any scalability. So I would strongly suggest cooperating with the utilities in Europe, to making a standardized security protocols to allow such startups as ours to connect to the system and finally get the real data, which can actually put on blockchain, on tokens, smart contracts, and then bring the real transparency into credit carbon.
What we try to do with the system of blockchain is trying to make a platform of resources common with the SDGs. And I see climate, I see energy, I see different projects. But in energy, we know that we have SDG, we have climate, the SDG, and for energy, the project is also to make more efficiency. The energy, it's good to have renewable energy, but we have to do so. This platform I propose, but you will see when we go out with this, you can want to join us, because it's really a common resources we want to do to work together. That's a project, I think, on climate and etc. Any kind of SDGs, we have the 17 SDGs. We have a lot of possibility, and a lot of facility. It's the mix of all these SDGs, which is, for you also the possibility to go further on other, imagination of this, and of the sharing of everything together. Jacques Macaire.
I would just like to say quickly that I agree with Jacques' points about the importance of extensibility of a platform to solve more than one issue, take that effort, and when it's possible to solve more than get two birds with one stone. I think that is aligned with the interests of efficiency and ambition and so on. I see a lot of heads nodding. If everyone would permit the people on Google Hangouts, there's some questions, and I think Ilan is first. Raise his hand.
Yes. Ilan.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to reemphasize our focus, which is on climate restoration. It's not about reducing emissions. It's about designing, maybe even engineering a healthy climate. I think that from our perspective, in order to accomplish that, one of the things that are very, very important on our development roadmap is a climate restoration dashboard, some sort of an open source project with relevant APIs, so that projects that are working on different aspects of climate restoration maybe even climate mitigation and so on, can report their impact in the context of the global perspective of climate, so that this dashboard can aggregate all of the different impacts of the different projects, and so that we can have a global accurate perspective on where we are and where we want to go. Now, like I said, our goal, our focus is on 300 ppm by the year 2050, but obviously that can change as we move forward towards our path. So again, this is very important because obviously we have one climate and one chance to restore it. And so being able to measure the impact of the actual projects, actual people on the ground that are doing the work, and aggregating that into a global dashboard, I think that's very important. So this is something that we're intending to do anyway. And so when I heard about this group, was very excited because I can see how this can potentially create partnerships in order for us to accomplish that mission. Thank you.
Thank you, Ilan. And I think we were saying Ingo also has a question or a comment.
Yes, Ingo.
Yeah, thank you very much. When it comes to the cooperation in this group, right, I think what the fundamental issue we are dealing with here is a management problem of the global commons, right? That is basically this shared commodity, and the whole UN process is very much around about this, except that, of course, countries are not the only actors in this. So I think the ultimate strength of the distributed ledger technology is to create a system that creates private incentive to manage commons, right? Which is actually something that's very difficult to do without. And the two challenges that I think that need to be kind of like addressed, or that could be addressed with this distributed ledger technology, one is, the accounting problem, is, like who is using how much of the commons, but more importantly, who is willing to contribute the most to the protection of the commons, which is all about ambition, right? And we need a unified way of doing this because we cannot have double counting. We need to make sure that rewards go to those who provide protection of the commons, right? Which is ultimately the DNA of how a blockchain is designed, right? Reward is issued to those that provide integrity. And we have that same issue, right? I recently wrote a paper. If you go to my LinkedIn profile, you can actually read it. I don't want to reiterate it. But in my view, this is basically the fundamental thing where we need to have consensus on how we want to go about it. And again, consensus, another keyword within the DLT community. It's all about means to find consensus, right? And we need to find the very basic protocols, the rules, the standards, which is also what I find so intriguing around the way Tom formulates this project, right? That allow us to do that allow us the amount of decentralization that we need, a decentralization in the DAO sense of the word, something that Nick has mentioned, right? That allows us to collaborate much more effectively between countries and non-state actors. Masamba, I see with great interest the evolution of what the Secretariat is doing in the direction of the inclusion of non-state actors, this very strong partnership program that you're putting forth, right? But what I don't see how it creates a level playing field between actions of parties and actions of non-parties, right? It's almost like an afterthought, right? There's a lack of integration that I feel could be solved through a strong embrace of this technology, like to create a global accounting system that is responsive to both, kind of like the needs and actions of parties, but also those of the non-parties, and distributes incentive to everybody who contributes to actions, right, that help us to achieve the Paris Pledge. What needs to be solved here first, I believe, is this problem of double counting. A country should not take credit for an action by a state or a city or a company, and vice versa, right? Or a company should not take credit for an action that was mandated by a government. And we need to find a rule book that allows us to do this, because at the end of the day, it's like what I said in the very beginning, incentive must go to the entity that protects the commons, and to use DLT to exactly achieve this, right? And so and this is basically the basic platform, the basic protocol that we need on climate, right? And then we can build very, very interesting use cases on top of that. But what I feel what this cooperation should be about is to find consensus on this very basic rule book that is very much fundamentally about, the commons, the definition of the commons, the incentivizing of those who contribute to their protection, and an accounting framework that is integrated across all levels of action takers and pledge takers. Sorry for being so long.
Those are very good comments to it. Go ahead.
I think taking into account what Ingo just said and what was said before by Martin, I think it could be useful to look at what are the priority use case for us of blockchain and climate action. And around this priority use case, build a narrative that could then be communicated to all the climate actors. I think this could be probably one of the first products this group will generate. Now, having identified priority, aware of what, and knowing what is currently being done, we can identify gaps and try to see where we should focus effort, try to have some outcome as soon as possible. Now, taking into account all these things that have been said here, definitely transparency will be something very important. Empowerment will be something very important. For example, for us, it will be very interesting to explore to what extent retail investor can be empowered so that they can exercise their right. If they want, for example, to influence the board of a company so that they change their investment plan to put more clean projects. Crowdfunding is also one area that is of interest for us. We know that if you want to successfully implement the Paris Agreement, finance will be critical. So we need to try to tap from all sources, including crowdfunding. Definitely tracking will be critical to avoid double counting. Everybody said that. And we are possibly in a situation that is particularly complex. Because as it was mentioned, you have parties with the NDCs, you have the private sector, you have subnational authorities, and all these different entities are conducting climate action. And then you may have overlaps, you have green bond, you have many types of incentives that are around to ensure that you are not double incentivizing an action and you do not have double claim. It's very important to use this technology to track and avoid this double counting. And the standardization is critical, and definitely we at the Secretariat are eager to try to help come up with some, let's say, standard that will allow to harmonize, to work on common basis, common ground, and avoid this issue of.
Just a little more.
I
mean, just because after it will be not on the. It's just because you're saying, and just to share, yesterday I was at Station F, which is Tech for Planet, and there is Hyperloop, which is there, and it's making a platform which is with open source, and it shows how much is going very quicker, that their project of Hyperloop going by sharing on open source on their platform, and now they have different in the world which is working on this. Just to say this platform community.
That's okay. I like to let you finish the way they did it.
Yeah,
I think if you try to draw a bit of a conclusion in the first part of this meeting, I think it becomes clear what the challenge is. We all sort of have areas that are, from our personal, professional, whatever perspective, deemed priority. We heard it, it went from energy, that was quite narrowed, all the way to SDGs, which is quite open, and then Ingo mentioned about the strategy of the commons thing, which is sort of the most open one, and they're all right, and it's all important to see that. So I think it's going to be a huge challenge if we as a group now say, let's prioritize. At the moment, I would like a standard for sponsor payment in time, because that's my main concern coming from the Hack for Climate, where a lot of the sponsors haven't paid yet. So that's my short-term concern. But we have, of course, all legitimate demands for standards and for sort of structured ways of doing things. I just like to caution that that's a huge challenge to speak about standards at this stage of climate, with a lot of standardization type efforts happening on the climate side, and in the blockchain DLT space, where many people don't want to talk about standards because they say we don't need standards. Standards are smart contracts, or standards will vote bottom up, in some big group, and they look at things very, very differently. So I see a challenge on the standard issue, while I see the need for somehow doing it. So what I'm trying to say and I'm trying to suggest for going forward, I think what Martin mentioned and Masamba also, in terms of communication, in my view, is really key right now. All of us share that same interest. We all have now an interest to make sure that the different state and non-state actors, and particularly the regulators in the COP UNFCCC, understand the potential of distributed ledger technologies in a general way, and they start factoring it into their thinking and into their action. That, I think, is a common interest that we all share, whether we come from energy or SDGs, whether we do platforms or use cases. We all have an interest that happens. So I think communication is, in fact, should be number one of our list. And that's actually why I suggested in my mail that we do a state of DLT, a state and trends of DLT type regular report, because that would give us a platform where we can communicate. And the question I like to ask is, should we really try to move further on standardizing things at this stage, or is it not better to say that we need communication, and with that we need use cases from wherever they come from, and to say whatever use case gets attention of regulators, of investors, of partners, should be showcased and should be featured. Because in my experience now of a bit of a year or more in this intersection, I understand that many stakeholders, particularly from the government, who have not yet thought about DLT, they tend to engage the most if you come with a use case that is close to what they know already. So you're at the forest guy, you come with a use case including forest, and you're at the renewable energies guy and you come with a use case in energy. And that moves their thinking, in my experience, the most. So that's like the question to the round. Is it more the standards push right now, or do we do a working group on standard, a working group on energy efficiency, and discuss these issues further without now trying to write sort of principles into MOUs at this stage? Question.
I was going to follow up, but Arturis, you were...
I would not, nothing yet.
Nothing yet.
I just have a general remark, if I may. First, I mean, especially because I do think that communication is key to start with. I agree with this. If we want to communicate, first of all, I think we need to have a name. It's very stupid, maybe, but we need to have a title, a name, or something. Okay, we need to be, I don't know, XYZ coalition or something. Second, I think we need to have a mission statement, because people need to know where we stand and where we go. I mean, we need to be clear on our mission statement. And maybe last but not least, and I agree, then we can start workshops and so forth, knowing each other and so forth. We need to share values, I think. And this is, in my point of view, our MOU. we have to take a dashboard and we put our main values, okay, I don't know, half a dozen, okay, and anyone who shares the values could be in the coalition. Anyone who thinks it's useless could stay out, okay, and then we start working. And last point, I think that we need someone maybe, and we could provide, having, for instance, an internship for a year. Here we have many internships. I mean, we could provide someone clever enough to make the secretary of our meetings, to prepare the next one, to try his best to gather, I would say, data or any kind of files and so forth. So if you want, we could maybe propose someone here who could be the secretary. Nothing, I mean, if you have any other idea, I mean, it's open.
Thanks very much, Jean-Michel, for some very practical suggestions on moving forward. Well, I think we're converging towards a common understanding. Covered a lot of ground, and I just wanted to make a follow-up statement to both of your statements, and then back to you, Ms. Samp. I think the way I see it is, it's true that we simply can't just start standardizing, pick on one issue, without dealing with a lot of other supporting matters. So, for example, coordination, I think, is why we're here. We all see the interest and value amongst ourselves and for our stakeholders, whether that's the parties and under the Paris Agreement and beyond, frankly. And that if we had something of a mutually agreed roadmap that outlines or structures the scope and the mission statement and the values, I think that's one of the priority use cases is coordination and collaboration, right? That's a climate action in and of itself. And I think to Nick's point that we don't want to get in the way of innovation. We simply want to provide some meaningful framework within which that is helpful to all of the innovators, knowing that, well, this will at least get us more or less paddling in the same direction, and then standards can come about in parallel with and as this foundation takes some shape. So I think, does that seem like a balanced way of looking at all of the various needs, at least for a starting point? And I think Mustafa, and then Ingo was online, and then to Carl.
Yeah, I think there is quite a good consensus that we need to communicate. But we need to be also aware that if we communicate only on the basis of theoretical element, we are only halfway in this communication. People want to see concrete product. So name, yes, I agree with you. The vision, yes, we need to be clear about where we would like to go. And strategic approach, how do we get there? And I think this is this issue of prioritization. I actually think we are in a sector or in an area that is fast changing. And I think in such case, the best approach is not to try to completely understand the whole system to start acting. So we can develop a strategy, but the strategy would not be something cast in stone. We will learn with experience, come back to the strategy, revisit and change as needed. But we need to start acting quickly. So what I would suggest is number one, name, yes, vision, yes, use case. We need to identify all the possible use cases that are known by us that could be relevant for climate action. Start communicating on this use case and select one or two specific cases and try to do something about this case. And I think this is why this proposal of DCF is very important for us. It could be an opportunity to apply this RED Plus project, to apply blockchain to the RED Plus project for tracking of event-based payment, for monitoring smart contract and all these aspects. So it will complete this communication aspect. So you will give possible use case. You will provide information on the state of the art, where are we, what has been done, and then you will provide a concrete example of application of blockchain to a real climate change project.
I think you make some good points in any kind of change management or transformational change, showing those good wins, building momentum, confidence, and credibility is going to be important because we can't do everything. So I think we all agree. Miroslav, are you able to transfer the mic over to Ingo?
Sure.
Yes, I very much agree with the approach that focuses on delivering a tangible benefit in comparison to how we currently do things, right? And I would call it a use case. I would also call it a pilot, right? What I would like to see is that we pick something that starts very small, but that we think can scale into something very big. It's my first point. And my second point is in the way we work together, right? And there I think we need to leave behind our fixation on kind of like on an institutional approach, but try to emulate something that Nick has said earlier about this, like the decentralized autonomous organization, which is ultimately a collaborative effort, right? That kind of like takes in kind of like a very networked and distributed approach, right? And I believe it would be advantageous to use the tools that are also used in the community, in the developer community, in the blockchain developer community, to advance and to build such use cases, right? I'm an active contributor in the IOTA blockchain, in Ethereum, and in the Solarcoin blockchain, for example. And I like the way that community works together, and how that community reaches consensus, and how that community rewards contributions towards building the use case and the pilot case.
Ilan, I think, would like to speak again.
Ilan, well
and then
Yes, thank you, guys. I agree and accept everything that was said about creating a vision and creating a shared plan and so on. I would like to add to that that I think if we're to get to a destination, we want to be very clear what is the destination we want to get to. And so we chose 300 by 2050 as our goal. This is the result of the work of Peter Fiakovsky, who is the founder of the Healthy Climate Alliance, that's been doing this for the last year and a half. Talked to a lot of scientists, a lot of engineers, and so on. We got a very positive feedback around this very specific goal. 300 ppm of CO2 by 2050. Obviously, there's a lot of other aspects, like, for example, the ice caps. CO2 obviously is not the only greenhouse gas, and so on. But I would like to suggest that as one of the goals for consideration, because I believe that using blockchain is a means to an end, and we have to be very clear about what the end goal should be. So I think that's one of the first things that we want to talk about and agree what is the specific goal, a specific climate goal that we want to reach. Or in other words, what is considered to be a healthy climate? So the video is frozen. I don't know if you guys can still hear me.
Ilan, Ilan, Renee here. I can hear you, but it looks like my mute is engaged fully.
Hi, I can hear you as well. So good points.
Okay. I saw a little notification on the bottom that the glow chat.
That the organizer dropped out.
Yes.
Oh,
Well,
fantastic. So it's
everything's
just
okay
us.
in Paris.
We can all have our own
It's
discussion.
fun. It's very funny that we have an advantage, you know, being remote versus being in the room, you know.
Well, it's decentralized meeting locations.
Yeah, it's like the
You know-
decentralized stuff really works.
I just want to say that I think that the whole like forming criteria, for me, and I think I'm reflecting Elon's comment, is that it's just essential for us to get some kind of a document that can give us the guidance to create an API. So I think that for me, it would be one of the more important things to be able to be productive. So.
Yeah, but just I want to come back to you know, when we talk about also the use cases, it's like, what is the reward? You know, basically, so we are, you know, like the use case about creating results. Okay, the guys are back.
Okay, the end of decentralization. Okay.
People would be very happy to have a possibility to invest small amounts of money over 10 years for, let's say, 4-5% return on investment. Which could be many using.
It's just them or us again too?
Seems the organizer is frozen.
Yeah, it's frozen. I
Okay.
can't see it.
Yeah, that's what I see.
Power is freezing too.
I think the discussion of 4 or 5% return per annum really just shut down the whole blockchain discussion.
Exactly. That's when it dropped out.
So we were talking about qualifying.
Yeah, but
we might as well just have a meeting here. What can we all do?
Yeah.
I was just going to say that I don't see any implicit
like
friction.
5 in the morning, I like put a jacket over my pajamas.
I don't see any friction in between the sort of two camps of needing use cases and needing some organization of the people around the table and on the call. And I think playing to the strengths of the clusters, I think around the call and the people on the phone, including ourselves, organizing to put something in place, to have an MOU, to have a name, to have some notional structure is great. And there are, you know, thousands of use cases being innovated right this second.
Yeah.
And so they will come, and there's limited need for this group, I think, or at least with the hat on of this meeting to be innovating the use cases. We need a good home for interaction and exchange.
Yeah,
I agree with you.
I
don't know, next time, one suggestion, let's try another thing that don't hangouts. I just fell down like 40 times and trying to get in again. I don't know why, but anyways, I agree with you guys. We need one name. We need something that is recognizable around the world, and that these different initiatives can come to us. And that we can select, or we can make them join us and see which is the
rest of the ecosystem
synergy
or not
can help us.
Question marks from any.
Oh yeah,
If I may, the
Agreed.
average newspaper reader, and this is how people as well are confronted with the new technology, basically under the heading of Bitcoin. This connotation of a slightly dodgy financial bubble which is going to explode any second. There's much more behind it than that, but particularly that needs to be communicated, because you don't want to be in that space of, you know, better keep at arm's length.
Man,
you're having problems also, right? Yes.
He talked about the newspaper again, and it dropped off. I tell you.
Yeah.
Basically, because the acceptability is still very low, and there are lots of others. So my point would be that this is very important. It's so much important to help you doing the job of promoting the technology and that solutions. You know, basically not trying to to find out what you can do for us, but rather what we can do for you as a group. My question would be, do you need such coalition to be strong and to have a strong commitment? I mean, my good proxy would be over the year, the UNPRI, starting in 2007, the UN Principle for Responsible Investment. There was, straight from the beginning, there was a very strong narrative. What was it about? The acceptability of the financial community was very low at that stage. There was only many people saying, this is bullshit, and there's no need of that, it's a wrong timing or whatever. Acceptability is very hard. So, and that it was all based on a very strong narrative, with a few actors at that time that were basically supporting it, not that many. It was still a group, and there was a world with some kind of a consensus coming from various parts of the world. So do you think it's something in this kind of coalition or commitment that is needed at your level?
Answer with a non-answer. Highly specialized group of negotiators negotiating around the climate agreement since years now. The climate agreement, the architecture of it, in science, it's almost incomprehensible. But you got these people who are like many years sitting in the trenches and negotiating. They have their own reality, they have their own logic. And part of what will be different next year is that slowly the reality that the Paris Agreement is there and that the rule book, which is going to help us implementing, making good headway. And hopefully by COP24 next year, the rule book will be finished so that we can really go full on implement. That is a massive mind shift for all the community that is around the climate change process, creating it happen. The book is there. The Paris Agreement is not just another milestone in the climate change progress, but it's the basic and the beginning and the foundation of an international regime that will run over many years and hopefully get us where we need to go. So in this transition, we are basically building just now mechanisms about harnessing the different expert communities and transmitting that into the conference room. And one of the outcomes of the last COP is the Talanoa dialogue that has the explicit mandate of the Conference of the Parties to do exactly that. And we are designing and shaping that while we speak.
Lost them again.
Yeah, I start to feel like we are like the guys sitting in the ranks of the Muppet Show, the old guys.
Pretty much, the old guy. Up in the balcony, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly, like commenting on what's going on here.
Peanut gallery. Hey, Ingo, are you going to be at the Asia Pacific Carbon Forum tomorrow?
Yes. Are you going to be the blockchain?
Can I bring up something productive?
Yes.
There's a couple things. I love the schmooze. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm in a place I probably need to get going. And I wanted to just say one of the things that I think we're running on like completely different.
And it's about.
Amy, finish your train of thought.
I just think we're running on a very different time schedule than
society.
This will actually interfere with the feedback loop on the recording.
When they drop out again.
That's something that can also resonate with this technology on finding a much broader basis, like the currency for the world, that sort of thing. So if that, I don't know if that helps you, but we are forming this process while we speak, and from the other side, if we had an interface to work with, I think that would be very helpful.
Yeah, just to chip in there because I need to leave with Martin as well, but I think just to answer your question about, approaching people about blockchain or COP23, I think linked to the whole communication aspect. I don't think you should go to people to say, oh, what do you think about blockchain, distributed ledger? Think of the solution first that it addresses. Oh, you know what? We can help a small farmer in Africa, track their impact and actually get access to mobile finance, small finance to help them. And I think if you talk about it that way and not talk about the technology itself, I think that'll help. So I think that should be part of the communication package. And second, to add on what Martin's saying, I think where I see this technology can really help is really to get to one of our priorities for climate action is broadening participation. And the way we think to broaden participation into so-called developing countries is actually, I come from the CDM world, and the amount of overhead to develop a project proposal, PDD is overhead is enormous. But if you can use technology here, where the small farmholder in Africa or in SIDS can get access to finance and say, you know what, this is credible, I know it's going to be delivering, then and there's a lot of overhead, then I think that will help us broaden participation to those actors, because I think they will participate only not in the traditional way in the Western country. So I think this is the potential of the technology as well. Sorry. But
okay. And if you have any cryptocurrency things, we should invest.
So if I can facilitate the discussion, I think Carl Schultz has been waiting with the comment to make still.
Yes, although it's benefited from the last year a lot. And what I was going to say and will continue to say is that I think we're talking now about sort of non-state. We're talking about non-state governance. We're not necessarily going to do non-state governance. UNFCCC plays a role of interfacing with governments who can do things that non-state governance cannot, and they can also stop here. But we don't, I think there's a tension. We don't know yet. I think it's appropriate. We do not know where we should end up at this point, considering the process is unfolding with the rule book being developed, developments in how we do our own respective jobs, distributed ledger solutions is still not fully mature. And so what I would suggest is it's going to be important to have this communication effort strong, but then have a much more flexible but robust MOU that considers where we think we can go in the future, and have it be something that you feel very comfortable with embracing, so that you'll be there for the ride and can also interface with governments in a way that is useful for all three parties: this group, UNFCCC, and the governments down the line. So what I'm suggesting, I'm sorry for being so lengthy, is that there's a good tension that needs to be resolved through developing sort of concrete initial actions, but a much more flexible agreement for where we go forwards. That's just my strong view on what would make this constructive to begin with, but flexible enough in the long run.
Thanks, Carl. I would agree with you, and I think it relates back to a point Nick had mentioned about the rate of innovation and the extent of innovation. I've been looking at blockchain for 2.5 years now, and on a regular basis, like weekly, something comes up that blows my mind, just like, wow. And that's after spending lots of time and on a regular basis. I think absolutely required, but it also speaks to improved communication even amongst this group and our close stakeholders, in addition to points that were made by Martin and Ian. Because we really don't know where all of this is going yet, to be honest about it, right? We have some interim milestones that we think are going to achieve great improvements, but we really don't know how far this is going to go. I think that would be fair to say. So just to reinforce your point about having a flexible MOU, that perhaps we simply agree we will revisit on a regular basis and no less than every 6 months. If we are going to meet twice a year, or maybe we have some more web meetings over the next 12 months, more frequently than twice a year, to enhance that, because to your point, we don't have a strategic plan in stone. It's going to be strategic planning.
Yeah, I think everybody agree on communication element, which is very important, that as soon as possible to communicate on how blockchain can support processes. There is urgency because we need to act quickly, because the successful implementation of the Paris Agreement require very quickly action at scale, so that we be on track. We joined the 2050 trajectory as soon as possible. An element could help in that direction, because the earlier the climate actor take on board blockchain and try and then start using it, the better. So that part, I think, needs to be done very quickly. With these two components I have proposed, one is focusing on the use case. What are the solutions that blockchain can provide to climate action? Not necessarily, as it was mentioned by Jan, the description of the technology, how it works. All these things are good. But I think the most important thing is what are the solutions it could bring to climate action. And then have one or two concrete application of blockchain. Say it works. Here is one concrete example. Now, when it comes to the strategy, the MOU, I think the strategy, at least we need to be clear about the vision, where we would like to end up. And that part could be quite stable. But how to get there, I think the world is now, particularly in this area, changing so fast that you cannot predict. The only thing that you can know is the future you want to build, and this will be your guiding star. Now, how to get there, you start, and then you learn from experience and you adjust as much as needed. The MOU also could be quite open, not to, let's say, cast ourselves in something that we need later on to evolve. We can have it grow. Others can join, but at least ensure that the principle are there. And if we all agree on the principle, it could be enough to move forward. I would like just to add one element. When it comes to application to blockchain, application of blockchain to non-party stakeholders, there are really a lot of very, very important, particularly in the financial sector. We all know that finance will be critical for the successful implementation of finance. How do you incentivize the change of behavior of financial investors will be critical. And how do you measure, for example, alignment of portfolio with the long-term goal of the Paris Agreement? How do you assess all these things will be very critical. And if you want to do it properly, at least the initial idea that we have will require review. It will not be possible to go in that direction. So it really means that it has a huge potential, particularly on non-party stakeholders' action. And we need to identify these key things and prioritize some action so that we demonstrate and it incentivizes further kind of action.
Asamba, sorry.
Yeah, I'd just like to build up on what Asamba said and what you said just before. It's urgent and we need to be specific and we need to have a name. So I would just suggest that we are treating it as urgent and we become very specific in this meeting. I suggest that we build a coalition called Blockchain for Climate Coalition for the name. I suggest that this coalition is meeting twice a year. I suggest that we don't sign an MOU, but a membership agreement to this coalition that specifies the values,
the principles
that we should in this meeting discuss and then go through one round of feedback, and that it basically says that you want to be in this coalition, you have to agree to these set of. I suggest that this coalition is led jointly by a representative of the Secretariat and a representative that in the DAO way is voted for by all the members of the coalition. And I suggest that Tom, who is taking the lead in this effort of coordinating everybody now, is basically taking the role as the first representative of the coalition, so that we can very specifically just so excuse my French, but I think if we want to move specific and if it is urgent, let's move forward. And I think that could be very sort of easily implemented. To be even more specific, the Institut Louis Bachelier have suggested that they are the Secretariat. I had sort of on my list that should be the Secretariat. I think the best solution would probably be that we also split that up in the interest of urgency. The Climate Ledger Initiative is already financed to develop a stakeholder mapping. So the Secretariat function could be split into two. To do coordination of meetings and working groups, and we could do the Climate Ledger Initiative running the yearly state and trends report, to which now sort of we could already contribute, so that the first one could be published in May at Substa. Because my specific suggestions on the meetings would be that we meet at Substa and we meet at COP, and have 2 yearly meetings. So that's sort of a package I'd like to propose specifically for.
Thank you, Nick, for that proposal.
I would concur with the last conclusion, which is to have a calendar. As we all know, the difference between an idea and a project is the calendar, and we need a calendar. If not, we will continue to have a lot of ideas and smart ideas, but we will never have a project. So, value. Be specific, as Nick said.
Well, before we tackle a particular issue, I know I encourage you to wait to make a comment.
Yeah.
Which you can do next.
Since Nick suggested actual actions, suggest to use our V-Power as a platform for launch pilot projects, because we're doing the biggest pilot project in the energy sector using blockchain, and we're tokenizing all electricity. So it's a good test case to do 2 specific things, and which one falls under UN priorities. One is financing, one is global in this sense. So this is one test case, and using our system, we can do a second test case, do emission accounting on blockchain. Since our platform is connected to the grid systems and renewable energy producers, we're gonna create plugins for each different grid based on our expansion plans. Eventually, we can share our software, which we already publicly
communication tool, kind of thing, this suggestion on the yearly report, but you can also
And mission statements, maybe. It's mission statements in one, or values is something else. I mean, how to present it 10 seconds, okay?
I think what is important is to know what we mean by it. There are several definitions, but So it includes where we want to go, the mission statement, and the key value.
Yes. Okay. We use mission, who we are, and then values, sort of what we stand for.
Yes.
And now we are doing what we are.
And Tom, if may I add an element of in the foreseeable future is, as I told you before, we've had at the COP23 already some networking activities, and there we have thought that in communicating this topic, blockchain for climate action, it would be good to have an event at the World Economic Forum in January 2018. And some partners of our networks have already had talks with a strategic partner, founder, Shandi. I don't know exactly what his organizations is, but I think many of you know him. Funding for at the World Economic Forum, and I'm sure that it could be integrated with this coalition that is emerging here. And I've spoken today also with James Close from the World Bank, and he said they have also prepared a report about blockchain for the relevance of blockchain for carbon markets, and so they could also come and present their study there. And Alistair Mark has his publication with best practice cases about the use for of blockchain for climate finance. There are already these knowledge that power holders, and I think the World Economic Forum would be a good opportunity for all of us to somehow communicate this topic and give it more visibility. UNFCCC could be a partner of such event, and the partners and UNFCCC.
I think you mentioned something maybe which could be broadened a bit. I think it could be in our principles or values, but I think that every time we could mention our fellowship being in this coalition, I think will be something big, because we all act individually.
Yeah.
If, I don't know, it's kind of visiting card or whatsoever. For academics, it's called the signature, you know. They sign with their university and so forth. Do we agree to sign member of
the coalition?
And for me, it could reinforce very much our voice every time we speak.
Sorry, guys. Can you hear me? This is
Or
from
email, it could be a signature email, I don't know.
Before we continue, we have a new...
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Excuse myself.
Sorry, I didn't.
Suppose you want to know my name, what am I doing, and so forth. Okay, so my name is Guillaume Bruyas. I'm from Data Consultancy Services. I'm in charge of the business development for TCS in France for all the package software, which include two major lines. One is TCS Banks, which is no matter here, and the other one, which is Quartz, which is the blockchain offering, which I was listening a minute ago about the corporate action. We announced at Cybos a partnership with BP2S, BNP Paribas Security Services, for the distribution of corporate actions leveraging Quartz and Ledger, which is the base technology which is used for that.
From which organization?
BNP Paribas Security Services. TCS is the owner of the intellectual property and the software for Quartz, as far as components, which I will not describe here unless asked. But it is right now, let's say, starting full implementation as a distribution vehicle for corporate action, first within the BNP Paribas CIB and security services environment, and we'll possibly go forward.
So I've jotted down, hopefully this is legible, even in the room. I apologize to the people who are online who might not be able to see this at the very end of this big room. A number of issues that hopefully we can tackle and proceed, because our meeting agenda stated a draft agenda that we would go until 4:30. And so I'd just like to check with everyone's permission if we could continue in half-hour chunks to see how far we go. I see some nodding heads. That's
There's
fine.
no program between the 4 deck and the 7 dinner. There's no other program block, right?
Not necessarily.
So that's an issue. But I don't know if other people are
Swimming pool.
Yeah.
I think I'm not in the right forum because I see all you guys are attending a meeting which started at 4.
Okay. No, I guess when I start moving, it will be disconnect from the projector again.
I'm just suggesting if we could somehow get, yeah, or something like that.
Yes, that would be good.
Yeah.
I would like to add something.
Okay.
You even move it across.
Is that Francisco?
I don't know what his name
Yes,
is. He only
yes,
came at
yes. Hello.
Please go
Yeah,
ahead.
basically we are talking about that we want to make a mission statement, a name, who is gonna lead the coalition, and we are talking that we have to bring use cases and that we are gonna meet after 6 months. But basically what I think that we have to bring out of this meeting is the main goals that we want to achieve, the main proposals that we have to do, because in blockchain, yes, there are, like you guys said very well during all this day, that there are like different applications that every day are coming out that they are amazing us, and that so what I think we have to do is to think a little bit big, think big, and think what we can approach, what problems we can approach. I don't know if the finance problems with the different development countries, or but we have to focus that. And what I propose is why don't we send like, we think about what we were talking today here, because we have to. I've been here, like everybody listening what you guys said, and I think we have to think of everybody and bring up some new ideas and the basic points where to work from. Like like I don't know if 5, 4, 6 points, but we need to bring up with we need to bring up the different points, bullet points where we have to work in this coalition, because if not, I don't see any practical use of what we were talking today, right? Sorry, I don't know if
And on again. Yeah.
Francisco, in the room here, your audio came through a bit choppy and delayed, so it wasn't perhaps 100% understood, at least not by myself. If you could try again to summarize your key messages.
Yeah, what I would propose is like to think about what we said today here, what all the parties said here, and instead of thinking of everybody's what they are doing at the moment with their own systems, with their own projects, why don't we think to bring up with think what we said, bring emails, send emails to everybody or to Tom, and make a resume of the bullet points that we should work on obviously blockchain technology, but the applications that we are going to focus on, because if not, this is going to be like, I don't know, there are, like you said, there are many applications every day bringing up, but we have to think big and see where we can focus all of us in trying to help, really, because this is not a matter of a coalition. This is a matter of doing something big, doing really something that matters. So I think we have to approach the problem, finding the objectives we want to achieve. That's the point I wanted to state. Sorry.
Thank you, Francisco. And I'm just looking at some of the points that of agreement online. And is there any reaction in the room or questions for Francisco? As I understood it, Francisco's point is in tackling some of the issues that are on this flip chart, that these proposals are put in perspective of objectives for a further open discussion.
Yes.
Okay, which I'm in agreement, because even though we have about 25 people that have either called in our room, I have a feeling this group is probably going to triple or quadruple in size within 6 months in terms of who wants to participate, and then a larger interested stakeholder group that might not be as core involved. And I certainly would welcome more people helping out, because it's a long list of things to tackle. So with that point, and to carry on, try to tackle part, but maybe take the easiest point, which is suggesting a name so far. The email that Nick referred to as the Blockchain for Climate Coalition, did I get that one correct?
Yes.
So that was proposed from the Institut Louis Bachelier, in that they would be willing to provide climate change as a name, transfer that over to the group as more compact, yes. And so those two options are what are being suggested thus far. Are there any other?
Well, did someone mention that blockchain isn't really exactly what we're dealing with DLT? So I just want to raise, and that's a little more complicated, but want to raise, is that something we want to stick with blockchain or?
I can have an input. I spent about the last 4 months, I spent probably collected 4 hours on this very issue, whether e-communication you should do blockchain or DLT or distributed ledger. So like it's a communication issue. Story short is that most people will refer to blockchain, but if we have a formal text, we should always mention that it's really concerning distributed ledger technology, commonly known as blockchain. Because a DLT, I mean, DLT chain or DLT coalition sounds even more scary to the regulator.
And just to ready to say what offer, we choose like climate change, is that we thought it was beyond the idea of blockchain, basically the idea of a human chain, the idea of something forming something together, and as Jean-Michel said very earlier, I mean, our initiative is very open, and so we register that name, we've got the intellectual property and everything, and we are very willing to give that away to the new entity, to the UNFCCC, absolutely any right on that, simply providing that there is a set of rules that we agree, and values that we agree, and this is not used for basically bad business. That's basically very simple, and it's very simple.
Climate change.
I have nothing, just to be clear, I have nothing against climate change. I think it's an excellent name. I would probably add the coalition, not in a website or anything, but I think the best word to signify what we are is a coalition where we share common values, and therefore we are in the coalition, but not everybody has to be in the coalition, that kind of thing.
So, for example, Climate Change Coalition, but
website, climate change. That's all right. You guys are the register.
We give it that.
We give it as a comment. So
Global Commons.
okay. I think if we want to refer to being fellows of something, we need to have something easy to use. Okay. So Climate Change Coalition, CCC, I don't know, is something quite easy. A member of the Climate Change Coalition. I don't know if it's global, but it's easy to use.
Sounds good. So we'll, if there's no objections, we'll use that as the proposal following this meeting as an aim and see what the feedback we get is. Great, thank you very much. Then there are the next 2 points that I picked up, and correct me if I've captured this incompletely or incorrectly. Having a couple of co-chairs and a secretariat support group. And I recall the proposal Nick had suggested you and FCCC co-chair and another non. I would encourage all of us to look around the table and note what you see and who you don't see. And so I would suggest we
all male.
Pardon me?
Just
we don't see women. Yeah, that's a problem.
That's correct.
Maybe
and we don't see any developing countries.
Yeah, that's also true.
And so I would propose we create maybe a steering committee or a leadership group, and we have some co-chairs, but that we have a more diverse body that would facilitate, whether that's 4 people or 6, and that we invite it to be intentionally multi-stakeholder. I think because we want to be able to demonstrate that we are very much linked across all of the stakeholder groups. Okay, so and we can have rotating chairs that can be elected at the next month. Okay, I'll flesh that out afterwards, and we can come back to that if there are any questions. I think the secretariat support is
one person.
Sure.
That's just for this item.
Yep. So just for you in the back there, I guess you can see this reasonably well, maybe not.
Can we just move that camera just to the other?
Yeah.
A little bit down.
And so just to recap, hi.
Diversity.
Diversity.
Oh, I'll try to outbalance the...
Yeah, just for building the architecture of this area, I don't know how to name it. Okay, so Stina on our side will take care of this, then we will find out who is doing what. Okay, so I wanted to present Stina as well to Nick, because well, there will be a shared okay, there will be a shared secretary or secretariat. Maybe it's something about this.
Initiative.
No, just
or the secretary.
Yeah.
Well, the way I'm seeing it is that if we have a couple of volunteering organizations, although this links to many areas of coordination activities amongst the coalition, whether that relates to planning events, this startup phase of this coalition, sharing some of the Genesis documents, whether that's an MOU, shared values, mission statement, a calendar, having that type of coordinating support is going to be very valuable. More than simply the 2 organizations, you might have a few auxiliary individuals that support, whether there are 2 events that we meet in person per year, or additional events as well as online events that I think are going to be very important, at least in the next 6 months. I don't think we could wait 6 months to reconvene a meeting like a web meeting, for example. So
could you give me like 2 words on the initiative and the name for it? So
the mission statement.
That's your job.
No, it's not.
Okay, so just tell me, what page are we at here?
So this is an initial working meeting, very much exploratory in how 25 individuals, half of them online from a variety of different stakeholder groups around the world, interested in blockchain and other digital technology applications for climate and climate-related issues around sustainability. And our objective is to a cooperative understanding that can be operationalized on how we could coordinate more effectively our resources and work together, whether that's on doing pilot projects, showing how blockchain can work in a number of specific cases, as well as communicating to our stakeholders how we can work with them and address both opportunities and challenges, not just for climate and how to scale climate actions through mobilizing more investment, for example, but also the underlying technologies around blockchain and digital being so disruptive that without some sort of leadership and good governance, they could certainly go in a multitude of ways that is not very successful. And so this group is really about providing some support to all of those innovators and all of their stakeholders so that we can all work together in the same direction.
And how did you end up here today, all of you?
One Planet Summit and a lot of beers, because Tom likes beer.
I suffered, I sacrificed myself.
And the name is the Climate Change Coalition, so it's very self-understanding.
And so right now we're talking about a very important function, which is around some sort of secretarial and a couple of organizations, ILB and the Climate Ledger Initiative, volunteering to support a lot of this coordination, augmenting those two groups with others that have the ability to more efficiently scale those activities for supporting this group as it grows. We're 25 now, we'll probably be 100 in the next 100 days, or less.
Yeah, just that question, I take your point on expanding the initiative to mainstream players. Leverage inefficient, I think utilities is a good example, but I think beyond utilities, there are other sectors as well. There's a lot. So how do you feel we should do that by making a call to them to join the coalition? And what's your view on that? And somebody on that, if you
Well,
so I think it would be useful to broaden the participation and try to reach
the question to you was, how do we embark all industries? Are we all as utilities?
I think wherever what we want is to use blockchain for climate. Wherever there is a potential for litigation, or even if it can be used for
kill millers, kill millers, kill millers, kill millers, kill millers, kill millers.
But I also fully understand that building this coalition and starting communicating, we need to have something to showcase. And the way we prioritize, we look at two elements. One is that we have the low hanging that could be very easily mobilized. The potential that
You're the scum of the earth. The goddamn niggers are the scum of the earth. The goddamn niggers are the scum of the
the power sector is a very good candidate to start with, or some other sector. See, if we have an opportunity, like in the case of this project, ECF would like us to work on nothing better than to say that project. So just to say that, yes, I fully agree with Nick. We have to build the coalition, the infrastructure. At the same time, we need to start communicating. This is very important because the player needs to be aware of this technology. communication will not be finalized unless we have a concrete project, demonstration project. And the people will that aware, they only trust what they can tell.
Yeah, but we have a lot. If we, providing we go on and find our mission statement, the principles and so forth, together, and put things on the table and discuss, debate these things and say, is it a priority? Is it something tangible? Is it something we can show, we can communicate on? And I'm sure the next workshop will be very fruitful. We will find 2 or 3 items to show, I think, mid-2018. That's my guess.
I think it's also worthwhile acknowledging that this coalition is really a coalition of coalitions in many cases, right, that are reaching out to youth in the case of that Miroslav is doing, and Hack for Climate, right to the developers, development communities and SDGs and so on, adaptation, that we highlight and actually work through those very much when the rubber hits the road, and that this higher level coalition is really meant to support that multi-coalition effort.
Yeah,
So shared rules.
As an echo of what you just said, I think that if we want to go quickly, we need to share on an openly basis. And by the way, every time I hear about blockchain, pretend to share that they are very complex in the way they present things and so forth. So one principle for me, openly share, but simplify as well what we share, in order to put everybody at the same, I would say, level and get power out of what we are sharing, I'm not sure I'm clear, but it's kind of, either we don't share, or if we share it openly, okay? As people share all open sources, codes, Python, all that stuff. Okay? We share it openly.
I agree. I didn't want to lose the point about the open process, and I think in terms of participation, we wanted to grow, of course, perhaps organically, but also proactively. The legitimacy of this coalition really on ensuring we are engaging sufficient stakeholder representatives from the various stakeholder groups. I think we all agree with that general principle.
Yeah, maybe this is an easy one, because if we have a name we all agree to, and we have a set of values that we share, and we put in basically a membership type of declaration, I'm in the coalition now, then basically it's in all of our interest to address other parties to also join this coalition, because it will be stronger. And I think it would be foolish to say, beyond a basic set of shared values, to say to somebody, you can or you cannot come into this coalition. We have to be open to everyone, provided this set of values. So my suggestion would be that we now talk specifically about which core values we would like to define, in order to basically divide those who are in it and those who are not, in a way that we're all comfortable with, that's open enough, so that also the Secretariat can say yes. But I would caution of making choices of use cases and stuff at the current stage before we sort of do this shared value discussion, because that's sort of the line in it. And if we talk and define our shared values, we'll also have a guide on how to choose use cases.
May I drop one item? Would be the neutrality of technology. Do we share this? It's a question. Maybe not.
I would like to ask one question. Do we want to address this during this meeting? We have the time to finalize this
values.
Yeah.
I think we should. I think that's the core of
we already have a proposal on the list, so we can.
And it's something interactive. We will know each other better if we interact now, I think.
Yes. Yeah. And also on the management and follow on, I think that should also be now who runs the Secretariat, how and the reports and stuff. I think that's also kind of a discussion we should have if we see each
Because
other.
one element for me that is very important that needs to be discussed is between now and the next meeting that will take place. The need to have very big discussions, because otherwise we will waste time between now and May. So, in the interest of time, we need to look at what is it that we put in priority.
Yes.
So one possibility is to have a kind of list of actions that will be taken between now and May, prepare things that will be agreed. Yeah, but if we can address principle and very quickly, then I think the next important thing is to have a kind of roadmap between now and June.
I have a question. Do you have a clearly defined goal for the coalition? You said we want to use blockchain for climate action. Is that sufficient as a goal? Is that clear enough as a goal for the group to work on?
I think we could break that down a little more detailed, specific goals. Yes.
And the reason I asked is because
Physical
connected to the values, I think it's important to know.
So that's like what we referred to before as the mission, right? What is the whole thing all about? So I think, if you can define that it's the application of distributed ledger technologies to climate in order to further climate action and enable the implementation of the Paris Agreement. That's sort of the first aspect, so the direct reference to the Paris Agreement, so that we don't have to talk about what type of climate action we mean, but we mean climate action according to the Paris Agreement. So we don't talk about targets and vision, and so we relay that to parties into the Paris Agreement implementation process. And then I suggest that the mission of the coalition is defined as to unite stakeholders who share common values, assure cooperation among stakeholders in the interest of speed of implementation. Because that's really what it's all about. I think we need to coordinate amongst each other to avoid parallel efforts and therefore waste resources and time lost.
Tom, can I make a proposal here? But I think we are discussing several things in parallel. I think we need to cover three aspects. Why are we doing what we are doing? I mean, the most important thing. People that they first would like to know is why this argument is the first thing. And this is related to application of this technology, distributed ledger to climate action. The second element is what we call the mission statement that will be about coordinating the different initiatives of the different coalition to use this technology for climate action. And this is the what we are doing. The first is the why we are doing it. The second is the what we are doing. And then the third is how we are doing it. And this is where I would like to use this principle of to do this, but with this value and principles in mind. So let's cover these three things separately. Why we are doing what we are doing, what we are doing, and how we are doing.
I'd like to take a shot at why. Right, so why are we doing this? Agreement goals, which are an enormous task, and with our current tool set, not going to happen. That's going to not be as fast and efficient in order to achieve those goals without these types of solutions like blockchain.
It's just the Paris Agreement. I'm all for it, but I just want to make sure that these voluntary issues that have no association necessarily with any targets or any NDC are not precluded.
Yeah. The surprise argument could be everything. It has absolutely.
Yeah, as long as, there could be things done that have no association with targets, and as long as they're permitted.
So that is a bit of a preface. Is that why that we want to contribute to achieving the Paris goals, that we recognize the trillions and trillions that need to be mobilized in all of the climate actions? If not possible, frankly, to say, to achieve without this type of technology and supporting system to facilitate faster acceleration movement.
Let me just say in a very one short sentence, we support the application of distributed lecture technology to the successful implementation of the climate action.
Great.
Full stop.
Great.
Support the application of EMT implementation of the climate action.
Okay.
And the right. I think what you said, Nick, we thought could fit here is about to coordinate.
Let's just coordinate.
Yeah.
Unite and increase cooperation and coordination.
Yeah.
And I also maybe address
And to address specific
and
objectives.
the pros and cons of no.
Sorry, could you say that one?
I mean, I'm not sure it should be worded this way, but my mission would be to address the pros and the cons of the solution, of the DLT solution. And it's very important to claim that we are proactively addressing these cons I mentioned, so with good confidence in what we are doing.
Yeah, I agree.
We are looking at the pros as well.
Wouldn't it go under the how? Isn't it
could be the how.
rather than the what?
How would be to be neutral, and I think neutrality in the how would be very important. So, what is really what will be the output of this coalition, and what will not happen if this coalition doesn't exist? Okay. This is for me the what. Where is the added value? What do we bring as a promise?
We can say
Faster, more secure. I don't know.
Would you have the word, it would be nice to have the word integrity.
The how, maybe.
I think it's about the what.
I would say that
integrity, yes.
a different initiative to avoid yes, and
we can maybe.
Yeah, and enhance the impact.
Yeah, enhance or optimize the impact, optimize or enhance. I don't know. Because what you were saying, Nick, was suboptimal. You know? Everybody is on its own suboptimal. Because maybe optimize fine. Enhance, optimize is fine.
Yeah. And maybe avoid patient.
And do we say in the what that we communicate, we tell what we are doing?
Yes, we can say in the what.
Either in the what or in the how through transparency. But I think communication is something people have to expect from us.
I mean, it has to be the what is we coordinate in order to avoid duplication and maximize impact, in order to communicate, and in order to share values, and then we share the values. How? We could say it like this.
We should mention also that communication is a tool for dissemination. This is what we intend to do
It's about the impact, no, isn't it?
You can say communicate and disseminate to all relevant stakeholders. And then if to quote Martin, including the regulators.
In order, and the last one being in order to share values.
So yeah, maybe we can, yeah, I think this is excellent to say that we coordinate to avoid.
You really need to shout.
Yeah, we coordinate to avoid overlap and duplication. And then the second part, I will start by saying we identify possible use case as the starting point and communicate to potential and communicate on potential applications.
Or communicate on the potential in general and with specific use cases.
Exactly. And also convey.
I prefer to avoid, yes, I prefer to avoid overlaps and maximize impact. And then we say in order to communicate, disseminate, and find applications or promote applications.
Promote specific use cases.
Specific use case. And the last is in order to share values.
Because my understanding of what we are trying to do is we are at the border between climate action and technology development. And what we are trying to do is to understand what are the possible use cases in the climate change arena of this technology, and then we disseminate this so that the climate actor can take it on.
Yeah.
So besides this coordination thing,
yes,
how can we characterize it?
Yeah, I think that use cases were more present in the debate that we had than in the final version.
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure that I think we need to put forward much more that idea to promote efficient use cases, and not only to balance the pros and cons and in fact studies or research.
If I can take pseudo chair authority to align participants to give them a chance to engage.
Yeah.
Alistair, are you there?
Hello.
We can hear you.
Hello. Hello, everybody. Yeah, of course, I support that the idea in principle, but I just wondering whether we need to really walk the talk, because we're working on blockchain and projects. The spirit of blockchain is decentralization. Believably, what we don't want to see as a result of today's meeting is the creation of another centralized bureaucracy that people may love us for. So, so I'm just wondering whether people would like to give some considerations as to simplify what we're discussing now, I mean the coalition, into a communication hub instead. I hope, I'm envisioning that the communication hub would give us all the, us and also the new entrants from whatever startup that you can think of, some essential transparency or some kind of communication support, so that we know that what each other is trying to achieve, instead of creating a bureaucracy that will with intention or unintentionally usurp the autonomy of the participating organizations. So just kind of thoughts as the inputs to the principles that we're discussing here. Yeah.
I'll just repeat, Alistair, thank you for that suggestion. And I think you're right that many people engaged in blockchain share those values that you just stated, and that we would be wise not to disregard them, and to the extent possible balance both autonomy and coordination for mutual benefit, and that as an open coalition, people are welcome to engage to the extent possible according to the shared values, but we don't want to limit, want to chain them down. So very good point to be captured. If I could follow on from some of the other discussion, if we could also have an FAQs in the shorter term, that would help communicate very easily key messages to stakeholders, that would be on the to-do list. To come back to the how, there was we coordinate and provide communication on shared values and disseminating the potential and use cases to stakeholders as well. But on the coordination side, around activities, whether that's not duplicating on research or not duplicating on pilot projects, if at all that can be accommodated, and capacity building and the other activities that we identified as relevant to the stakeholders here. But there's also coordination around the accounting approach so that we wouldn't have two blockchains trying to account for the same emissions token. So some general rules that we would all agree, and I'm sorry to be mitigation focused, but I'm sure this could go across applicable to other issues for SDGs.
But two elements, Tom, I think that all these elements are more relevant to what we are doing. This
More relevant.
The what we are coordinating, as you mentioned, and we are identifying and we are advocating. These are what, and the how will come later. My understanding is that the how would focus more on what are our values, what are our principles that guide the way we are working.
And that we would have events and online. I think Nick had made a point early on that we want to have something that's agile and dynamic, whether it's...
Yeah, this is the how also. These are elements of the how also.
And where do we put the willingness to work on the standard and to the integrity? We don't see that pretty quickly into the narratives.
Yeah.
I think we miss it right.
If I'm not misreading your statement, I think the draft declaration that speaks to many of the shared values, good basis to work from, and whether it's transparency, integrity, technology neutrality, and so on. Do we have enough energy to tackle that for 15 minutes?
We can start from your...
Yeah, from the one that's been, well, including feedback from others. Is that your, that's not your computer, is it?
No, it isn't.
I didn't know if there was a way to be able to email the, well, I guess the
Or
participants on the
do you
call.
have a USB key?
Excuse me, what is not clear in my mind is when and how should our network be stakeholder utilities, for example. The idea is to stabilize the organization and the principle the first year and to open after, or do we have any?
That's a very good question. I'm glad you just threw out a couple of examples like stabilized over a year, because in my mind, I have a different timeline. A year in blockchain world is like 10 years in regular. We have to move much more quickly if we're going to be meaningful, right? Because blockchain, we already know, is like light speed with their applications. If we show up with some of this stuff in a year, it's like we've missed the boat.
We need to dedicate one part of the next 15 minutes to that
Sure.
which is key.
Yeah, I totally agree. I couldn't agree more. But if we can, thank you very much.
Yeah, I wanted to make one proposal. Wouldn't it be possible to collect some input here and then to request some way to create work and then to request some to come to the drafting? I don't think put the key ideas and request them to translate it into the vision, mission statement, and urban, and then send it to everybody, the bigger group for comment. That we have something to do instead of using the 15 minutes that is left. It will be one back.
I didn't mean to mislead anyone. I said 15 minutes to try to be ambitious. I know we don't need to reconvene until 7 for those who are joining the dinner tonight. So I don't know how much more time we have. I don't want to assume people
I
have.
will need to.
And you would like to have a discussion about use cases or to prioritize areas?
For me, how I see things moving forward is that you said, because we don't have a lot of, you know, if you advise them to and there's the why, the what. And that's, to put it into, let's say, short sentence. We are not talking about long list of elements, that mainly vision, mission statement, and urban. It could be maximum half page. We spend our time now discuss what we will be doing between now and then. I don't want to
then, well, I really need to hear people about the principle.
I agree.
I have some in mind, and I really have them very
strongly
in mind.
What I suggest is can I see that we do not have, but this takes the rest.
Agree.
Yes.
Unless, well, Tom, do you agree? You could work with Stiner, you could work with anybody too.
We have a presentation.
I think we're.
Yes, the declaration is here.
You show them? Oh, right.
Yeah.
We can change this. I mean, it says Declaration of Shared Principles, but the title needs to be changed to whatever. And the wording.
And also sent our initiative charter along last mail, and that was also similar objectives.
Declaration. Manifest. We like declarations in France. Yes.
That's right. Well, we're hoping to get that out today, but that's a bit ambitious. Has everyone under the scene has seen this? Or had an opportunity to take a look at it? Maybe we just go through it quickly. And so the principles and goals, the urgency to achieve climate results, I think we've touched on that. Could be improved if needed. Advancing blockchain for climate. Collaboration in accordance with this declaration, which I think is what we're saying, one of our technology neutrality, commitment to standardization, and that term could be augmented, whether that's governance or whatever. Achieving blockchain benefits, mitigating fraud, and it goes on to the next page. Environmental integrity, so this goes to the double counting that we don't want to see blockchain wrapper around a phony carbon reduction, or double counting that, because that would be big. Sustainable development goals relation, and then our own climate responsibility, which is one of the big topics around blockchain and Bitcoin, that processing a Bitcoin transaction around a carbon credit, you've transacted 6 times and you've just offset reduction, the climate benefit you just had by using Bitcoin to transact it. So that whether that's actually valid, I haven't gone into calculations, but anything that's remotely close is something to be solved. Otherwise, we're not walking the talk in terms of saving the climate. So these are sort of shared principles or goals as a term, or values, however we'd like to rework this. This could be completely reworked.
Mine very strongly is to commit to a sort of fellowshipping, fellowship. In other words, I mean, we are member of something bigger than us, and whenever we share, we forget about our private agendas. You know what I mean? I'm not sure it's easy to put as a sentence, but for me, it's very important. If we are in, we don't have to. I mean, we are not obliged. Okay, So if we go in the coalition, we decide that we forget about things who would be for our own interest only, you know.
But normally, this exercise we are going to is meant to achieve that.
Okay, yeah.
So if we have shared value and common sense of purpose, then we need to subordinate our specific purpose, which is higher level.
Absolutely. Yeah. Impressive that we target to subordinate to this superior goal.
I would propose we add a little more resolution around that generic principle, because some of the people that we're going to engage are blockchain technology developers who could be finance to pay for that technology. And we need them as pilot projects to help inform the rest of us. So there might be some cases that there's a carve out, or however we'd like to call that. So some exception, but in general, what you take out, you should be putting in more than you take out in a way without being too black and white. That seems realistic, because there's going to be a number of parties that how they interpret that the general principle might be like, wow, does this mean that we top up something that's privately funded? And we can't not engage the private sector.
I fully agree. That's why I was mentioning it with our solution that needs very important. They need to know that if they have really something in mind which is pure commercial objective, joining the coalition, no way. We cannot have such an animal in the coalition. And there could be people who just join because they want to spy, and that's it, and they want to do their own duty, you know.
That's an interesting point that you use the word spy, because how open are we? I would think that we're pretty much totally open.
Yeah.
So there's no spying, it's all open.
Okay.
But the problem usually develops once you get into from idea to action mode, and you actually start to produce things, and you might have members of a coalition that, as you say, wish to protect their knowledge. So how do you deal with that?
I think this go back to one of the points that was mentioned, I think it was by Alistair. We need to be able to distinguish what requires collective effort and what requires collective effort should be addressed with this group. And whatever could be addressed, let's say on a separate basis, we need to give opportunity to the organizations that are able also to do their own things. Everybody can even so we need to, but the difficult thing, but it's difficult, but we need to do it, is how do we between what requires collective effort and that will be addressed by the group, and where the different initiatives can do things by the group.
Could we say that whatever collective work is a public good by definition? That's it. Okay. Whenever you do something collectively, it's going to be a public good. In other words, everybody could take it and make it its property, whatsoever. Where collectively we act for public goods only.
Would it be reasonable to give ourselves the flexibility to say exactly what you said, unless otherwise agreed through transparent disclosure, amongst which everybody would agree?
Which will deal with the exceptions, I agree.
So that's the operation, and then any agreed and disclosed up front.
Right.
So
okay.
Excuse me, but on the other side, we might be interested to put forward some use cases in which I have nothing in mind, in which the IP issue could be sensitive and.
Yeah, that's what I mean by being able to say, I have these IP issues that I can't disclose because investors walk away because they, but I'm going to contribute everything else. So as long as we allow that flexibility.
Definitely is that there are two things at least we want to address. One is harmonization. Don't want things to go in one direction. Two things actually. Second is trying to avoid duplication. Don't want research, same research to be undertaken in parallel by different initiatives. The other thing is we would like to have maximum getting out of this process. So it means that as long as and double continue, we want also to address double continue. So the foundation that will be dealt with by this group, in my view, needs to address only these three things. Whatever else on top, I think it's fine if the different organizations have their own system, but we need to ensure harmonization. We need to ensure that we will avoid duplication, that we will avoid double counting, environmental integrity, and this is the basis, the foundation. And on that, different organizations can do what they want. You can have IP. You can have
I fully agree with what you said. Maybe we could add something, which is that we will measure it and disclose our, let's say, realizations within 1 year or 2 years' time. In other words, we will be what we have been doing and what has been useful and not, you know. In other words, we won't continue if we find out that there is no impact. I think well, we will be transparent in our, milestones, let's say. We fix milestones and we will be transparent. If we could not achieve, we will be clear. Say, we cannot.
Yes, and I'm not afraid that in the three principles you mentioned, there's nothing about tackling the energy consumption and things like that, which appears to be, harmonization, notifications, and avoiding double counting. Probably doesn't. We don't see the energy issue is not there.
So we need to be realistic. What is it that we can do on this energy issue? That it's an issue, but what this group can do about it.
Well, maybe the answer, if I may, there's many things that we can do. We can all, work with blockchains other than the ones currently in use that use proof of work in the way they do. And we can hope that Ethereum translates quickly from proof of work to proof of stake. We can buy tokens of IOTA, or like in our case, we can define a use case called CleanCoin 7-8 months ago, and we are now writing a scientific paper that analyzes exactly what the footprint is, and we're planning for next week with Ingo and the South Global Group a press release on communicating actively. But the thing is here, this is a subject where I think in our words, we should write that we are looking to get the maximum benefit out of the technology and proactively addressing its current challenges, full stop. And I think that's what we can have in the declaration. What exactly then the different people will do will come about. But we should make, like you said, it's important for you that one good and not as a profit maximization effort. I can fully understand that. We can say we are not just keeping a blind eye on the bad stuff of the technology. By the way, when you see the figures, what Bitcoin is using in terms of energy, it's all ridiculous. I mean, we should say stop Bitcoin, but we can't. So it's really ridiculous.
In our context, it's difficult to avoid that.
For me, if we say we want to use blockchain for climate action, it's obvious that if the technology itself is
It's obvious for you, I think for many people it won't be obvious.
Clear that if the technology itself is leading to climate change, it's not the right technology.
Yes.
But we can maybe say it in a specific.
But this is like, if you look at the potential of distributed ledger technology, this is this potential. And the current problem is like this. We are at the beginning of the technology.
The way you put it, it's like if it's linked to distributed ledger technology. If it's not linked to the technology itself, but only to the way the technology is used in some, then for me it's not a problem.
I mean, fundamentally, you could say that you have consensus mechanisms that do not require excessive amounts of energy. And the preliminary results of the study we are going to publish show that if Ethereum transfers from proof of work to proof of stake, on a transaction basis, you use less energy than Visa uses on their transactions now. So actually, we're lower in the footprint in a proof of stake world. But proof of stake then comes at some disadvantages and blah, blah, blah. So this is a super, like, I don't think the coalition can in a large group address these issues. I think we should, I'd say that we're not blind to the negative aspects that the technology can bring. And
for me, it's not really related to the technology. For example, for me, the concept of mining itself is not the right thing to do. And I understand that in the block and the Bitcoin, the mining is that leads to this excessive use of energy.
Yes.
For me, this aspect of Bitcoin is this is the barrier. And then it's not the best way to use digital currency.
I agree.
Yeah, so then for me, the problem is not the energy.
But
So the problem is not the technology, it's just the way the technology is used.
Yeah, but practically,
if you remove the mining part.
But when I spoke to people in the secretariat and in the parties last year in Marrakesh, I spoke to 8 of them did not know what blockchain is. Out of the 10, there were 2 or 3 or 4 who knew, like a little less than half, who knew what Bitcoin is. So more people knew about Bitcoin than about blockchain. And you know, the WWF tells me that in Switzerland, in Sweden, I heard that it's the case. Members are calling WWF saying, hey, you know, we saw that you had a paper on blockchain being able to address or put people in the financial market that are not in the financial market right now, so a positive thing. But what about the energy consumption of Bitcoin? So this is an issue. It's been in the papers now, many papers. There's been, you know, very, very clear.
So let me just put it differently. Under Bitcoin, you are rewarded when you solve issue, mathematical issue, through mining.
Yes.
When it is applied to climate, I think that this is the right thing to do. Creation of global public good. We will reward climate services. We will not reward we will not reward the solution, the solving of a complex issue.
You're right, but this is not obvious for many people.
Yeah, but this is why I'm saying when you apply blockchain, if you, like it was said by Ingo, if your understanding is that you want the technology to be used to reward climate action, then the issue isn't it.
I think what you're saying is right, but we are people who know about that. If you're talking about the media, I think it's a huge reputational risk. And if we don't address that explicitly in the communication, I think we face a huge reputation.
No, I'm fine, but we need also to be aware that by putting it like that, we will, if you say we will address as it is formulated, we will address the limitation of the technology in practical energy consumption. To put it like if linked. And my understanding.
So like we're endorsing it, or
No, I think there's a way for more positive way to say that we will only work on technology which are carbon friendly.
My question is it linked to the technology or is it linked to the way the technology?
You could say that if the technology is distributed ledger technology, it's linked to the way this distributed ledger technology is used. So you're right. But in the public, when they hear blockchain, they don't think of distributed ledger technology and they think of Bitcoin. So this energy issue will be with us for a couple of years, and we should. I agree. We have to. The one thing we have to do is proactively look at it and get the challenges, because practically what's happening is we cannot, as a group, the UN cannot, as a secretariat or as a group of countries, on a particular country finds it difficult to forbid Bitcoin. So Bitcoin's going to stay with us if we want it or not. And therefore, if people continue to link it, the issue of energy consumption of Bitcoin will also stay with us. Mm-hmm. And therefore, I think, if I would have an interview right now, I would say that a coalition like this has the job to make aware of the problems and proactively seek alternatives that avoid these problems. That's kind of what you can say right now.
Hi, folks. Can I pipe in? Is it all right if I pipe in for a moment? Thank you.
Yeah,
Hi,
sure.
everybody.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to say, on the meta theme of making this coalition relevant to the maximum number of applicable organizations, ones that really make sense and that we want. There are a few pieces. One is I think that having a placeholder and proactively engaging the energy use of Bitcoin is important, but there's no utility for this coalition, really, if that's kind of one of our leading or key things. So I think that this is sort of part of housekeeping and creating some building blocks, but really focusing on the fact that if we want to help support and organize initiatives that are building and working to fight climate change, that it kind of doesn't matter at some level whether or not we like Bitcoin or we like the energy use. I think that that's kind of the task of another group. So I just wanted to plunk that in there. A semi-related issue is around the commercial use versus sort of organizational nature of the coalition. I think that we don't want to be a commercial entity, of course, but at the same time, blocking out commercial entities or blocking out people who are creating for-profit initiatives on the blockchain also, I think, would kind of defeat the purpose of this initiative at some level, and at another be almost impossible, because I think many of the people who are on the call and who are in the meeting already have one foot in the commercial aspect of this, and within 3 months or 6 months, more of us will. So I think some creation that allows for the engagement of people who are doing commercial work on this, and to have some of those interests represented, heard, and workshopped, hopefully for the greater good, is important, but the blocking it will be difficult organizationally. And finally, around Alistair's point from a while back around the creation of a bureaucracy, I must agree with him that in both in the spirit of blockchain and in the spirit of creating a coalition that can really have some impact and that can really grow, having a way to minimize, I think one person from the organization and one person from the UNFCCC doesn't sound quite right to me. I recognize that UNFCCC will have an organizational structure that may need one person or whatever, but I think more broadly, focusing on the grouped and decentralized aspect of that will lead to broader uptake and engagement in the coalition. Thank you.
Thanks, Joseph. All good points. So on the issue of the main values, every of the number of principles and values, I received a lot of feedback. It was all very positive, and I'd like to know what should become of the next steps of that declaration. Is going to be cannibalized into something that's shorter and sweeter. What are the views of the group? We go around for more.
Yeah, my suggestion is that's like it's a member agreement. It's a membership agreement to the coalition. So if I want to be a member, I have to agree to these sets of values and definitions, and that makes it for me the most simple.
And have you had a chance to look at the declaration principles?
Yes, and I think that covers the ground of what should be in that. I just think that it's an organization, a coalition, and the values are in the document that you agreed to join. That makes sense to me, and that's the simplest form. That's why, yeah.
You have an escape clause.
Well, I mean,
hello.
Coalition, yeah, of course, people should be able to withdraw themselves. And there's some other issues that we haven't gotten to, like coalition won't pick winners and losers, like endorse a particular technology X ICO, right? Whoa, we're not trying to, well.
Hello. Excuse me.
Hi, Alistair.
Yeah, just a quick point. We talk about membership agreement. Maybe it'd be better if we can call it a charter rather than a very formal one, membership agreement. And also one more thing is that now, as one of you has made a very good point very early in this meeting, that the blockchain climate field is growing exponentially, and there are dozens of new members joining this blockchain climate space. So while we are trying to develop this declaration, membership agreement, or charter, whatever we want to call it, we need to really seriously think about what are the values to the new and we're not here, either online or in person with us today. What are the values of joining this coalition from the perspective of a brand new entrance? That's all I want to say.
Sorry, Alistair, we're losing half of what you're saying. It's getting chopped up. So you start off your question, what's the value of, and then it gets cut off so we don't hear the whole thing.
Yeah, actually, I was saying that when we're mulling over this membership agreement or declaration or MOU or charter, whatever we're going to call it, we also need to seriously consider the value for the new entrants who are not with us today. As some of you has already make an excellent point at the beginning of this meeting, that the blockchain climate space is growing exponentially, and there are dozens and dozens of new members joining the space. And so if we want them to collaborate with us, what offer to them other than signing this agreement?
I think you make a very good point, Alistair, that we should have why join for new members or why support this initiative be clear and compelling for people in order to make the decision if they want to participate in the coalition. I hope I capture your point correctly.
Yeah, thank you for catching it.
That was great. So I know we've gone far past the original scheduled time, but I don't want to wrap up prematurely, but let's commit in the next 10 minutes. Max?
I think this issue of who can be a member of who not is kind of open. I would like to specify. I mean, you asked the question as well. How do we do this in terms of new members? And I think practically speaking, it's impossible to say that certain people we exclude. So in principle, we have to say this is an open coalition, and as long as somebody agrees to the values, they can join. But we have a few things like you cannot associate yourself with the coalition when you do an ICO or something like this, to kick somebody out if they break the rules, kind of thing. We have to have this sort of a way to say, you know, you can't do everything, because it will be done. So I mean, we had already 2 cases where people say, "Hey, I've been in the Hack for Climate, and you know they endorsed me, and that's why please buy my coins." It's very dangerous.
Yeah, exactly. There's certainly a negative list or whatever it is that people should be very clear about. So that, like, why join? And don't join if this is your plan. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's why I think we're on the same page there, and I feel like that's going to be on my to-do list to start to shape some language that we can all flesh out.
Yeah, that somebody understands that the coalition does not endorse the work of members, but actually the members endorse the value of the coalition. This way around.
Yeah. I totally agree. Yeah. And we all agree it's completely open to join as long as whoever's joining agrees with the coalition's charter, and that they also make a tangible contribution or what they will be contributing specifically. That's going to be an active member, unless of course they're simply there as an observer, which it's open anyway. So
it may be hard for people to state what they're going to add when they're just joining, because they may still be early in their ideation phase.
yeah, maybe we give them 90 days to let us know how they're going to contribute. Otherwise, they're an observer. What about timelines? Like, we kind of just touched on that. There was May, there was 1 year, there's Q1. What can we get out there sooner?
It's also the question in the timeline whether this World Economic Forum event would be considered as a coalition event.
What's the date?
It's around 23, 24, 25 of January 2018 already.
Is that the milestone?
Could be a communication milestone, because it's really a high potential for attention of policymakers, of people with economic power to really, and it's also an opportunity to connect with the World Bank, that they would present their report, because they said they were thinking of presenting it here, but it was not really ready. But
I think I know which report you're talking about, because I'm one of the authors.
James Close said that they were.
Carbon markets. Is it the digital innovations for post-2020 carbon markets?
They said it's a blockchain for carbon markets,
Okay,
but
yeah,
probably it's this.
So I'm one of the authors, and and they're supposed to be announcing that the same dates in Chile.
Ah, yeah, okay. So they are already planning to announce it at the World Economic Forum, because it didn't mention
the same dates.
Okay, fine.
So just as it was mentioned to me, that's actually a problem at the moment, that the World Bank is thinking about blockchain very much in the focus of carbon markets and energy and land management and agriculture and registries. That's just all a bit forgotten. So we have, that's a stakeholder, for example, where some awareness raising is absolutely necessary.
Totally agree. Beyond carbon markets.
Beyond carbon markets.
And that's raised in the paper, as well as beyond blockchain. Right? Just looking at digital transformation, sharing economy, all of the other digital tools, AI. What about the Global Climate Action Summit that's scheduled for September next year? That's before. There's a lot of really good events. Right? The WEF, I totally agree. Substack, totally agree. Top, totally agree. I think the Climate Action Summit in San Francisco, that's the week before the UN General Assembly, London Climate Week. It's also a very good opportunity.
Yes, it is.
And
Certainly.
Having an online for...
On that one, I think we need to have a web page.
Yeah.
So there are several possibilities.
As a non-blockchain guy, fundamentally, we're not reaching out to the broader blockchain community. I mean, events, except maybe World Economic. Are there blockchain events that need to that community needs to be.
So how me I see it moving forward is to take the opportunity of actually organize blockchain event. But it will be difficult to, because those that are supposed to organize blockchain event are around this table and
I'm talking to people who maybe they do blockchain. They're the guys who do the cryptocurrencies or whatever, or broadly speaking, those meetings.
Blockchain. Floor.
Yeah.
Kind of thing, yes.
There's one a day.
Because they don't know about this, and they get out. You know, it's important that they develop things in mind of what.
So yeah, having some ambassadors that go to those events to.
That's why I did Hack for Climate, because we need to tap the blockchain community for solving the problems. And we did lots of pre-workshops in evangelizing the climate issue with the blockchain community, because they were not aware of climate, but they didn't know that solving renewable energy or agriculture or land use has to do with addressing climate change. So I think that's where we can help. We have a good community of blockchain developers now, and we can feed. And there's a Slack channel that's active, which is the way they communicate, so through that we actively go into sort of non-climate events and meetings, and it could be that in the future we are also at the DevConf, sort of one of the most main sort of developer conferences, and to present something that there is this climate opportunity basically for the blockchain guys. I see that as an option. I think it's already quite a lot. What I was suggesting with Substat and COP is just to set regular meetings. If we then go to the left and go to California, but I think from a participant effort type of logic, most of us will go regularly to COP, and most of us will go regularly to Substat, because they're sort of the main ones. Meetings there, it just facilitates things. Can also do.
And I think if we can mobilize some resources, we can even do the meeting. We will have a meeting, but then back to back. And when we will invite those that are not part of this group, but that are after the blockchain.
Yeah, maybe we talk about different things, right?
Maybe the word is the mainstreaming. I think what you are trying to mainstream what we do, as we do for the financial community. And it's a message to the tech community, but it's also to some industry which are using blockchain.
So, can we spend some time on what we will be doing between now and the next meeting that is, I think, supposed to be in May? The SPs. Very good.
Yeah, that's okay. You guys be joining for afterwards?
I'm trained, so
I
expect to say, I wish you all
thank you for coming.
Good evening. Thank you very much for a great session. Thank you.
While they already have climate change, yeah, you can use that as a short form, less some typing mistakes in the long.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it's.
I checked that it was available. That's what.
Okay.
Climate Chain, I think you have the Climate Chain Coalition.
We are happy to give up action.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, sir.
Next time.
Yeah, okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so one more page to write down all of what we're going to do between now and.
Just undertake May, because then we will do it with a speed.
What was that?
Between now and May, and this is good also with the moment. So I think we agreed that Tom, we will get out something out of this.
I'm going to do that on my flight home. So it'll be ready by next Monday as a draft.
I think what we could do actually is thinking about the use case that we may be outside. my understanding is that at the main meeting, at the SP meeting, we would like to have one paper already out on the possible use case of blockchain.
We perhaps don't fix, I don't know how to perhaps forget, but who exactly do you want in this coalition? Because it's people from blockchain who want to work on climate change, or if it's people from climate change who like blockchain and want to work with blockchain. We don't perhaps precise this kind of who you want in this coalition. No, so because you say you have some rules to take off the people, no, so they must know where they go. No?
Yeah, I share your question. And if we are too restrictive in your condition to join the coalition, maybe it could limit the kind of use cases we could select and put forward.
No, I don't say too restrictive.
No,
just
it was rather
to
echo what was said by Nick.
It's quite confused for me. I imagine the people of blockchain, which is coming, must I do what kind of things, what is climate change for them, you know, it's, you know.
But then they have no room in this coalition. I mean, if we...
No, maybe. Because if you say that, it's because when you say we need some rules to take off the people who don't, it's not really on the rules, but go somewhere which is this kind of people. You say for blockchain, you have it's really go out the system, and so is going on this. Perhaps they are going to be on climate change. You have some ecologists today which is wanting to use blockchain really to do a new system. So do you want this kind of people?
So maybe
I'm not sure that
the paper you will prepare.
For me it's okay. I'm just to know
vision, mission.
If you want
I think that'll appear as
rule or not. Because if you say we have to take off, we don't fix the rule, so why we are going to take off? They're not. No, it's strange what I say.
Yeah, I don't quite get it. I think in terms of joining or not,
you worry about. You say that we need some rules, and one moment of the conversation I heard that you want to take off some people, which is not really on the way we do.
The rules.
But the rules is what? I mean, from blockchain, I'm wanting to do some
the coalition for other means.
It depends on what it will be, you know. Climate change, it will be really going, to take off, for energy, you have some people to take off, a lot of things. If you are in climate
I'll
change,
see you tomorrow
that some people
at the commencement.
wanting to get down the everything.
It's close by. It's close by.
So, and that they use some blockchain people, I don't know if you know this, but I have already approached this kind of people and they are really, so, no, it's just a question, it's not saying that.
Whether they endorse the
But it's just when I heard you have to take off the people.
Yeah, I don't see a problem to them.
Yeah, me neither.
How you are going to take off?
By stating a few values that you need to share, and if they don't, they have no role in the coalition. I think that's really a marginal problem. I just want to avoid that somebody's abusing the coalition. Like you can
abusing for you.
Abusing is, for example, that you do an ICO and say, I'm in this coalition, and this coalition makes the ICO, and you present it in a way as all of us here agree with this business case, even though this company or organization has actually just joined as a member. So if people abuse it, then just
you know, you have blockchain for it's for blockchain. So that's rule somewhere. You're doing, you have a vision of good, it's not, I'm doing blockchain, and I'm doing climate change. That's really a very general name, you know. Climate change is very things. If I go in SDG, I know that's climate change, but for you, it seems you say agriculture, but I mean, you know, so where is stuff for you? It's not a
Paris
Paris change. That Paris Agreement is good, right?
Yeah, but it's necessary.
But for the blockchain, yes, but for the blockchain,
I'm sorry, that I just don't take your point.
I see that it's not stopping somewhere. I see some people for solar panel, which is going, they don't want to, they want to just invest and doesn't care about.
They don't have to do the
It's good this for blockchain. It's not going on the way we want all the time.
They don't have to do the production.
They would like, because they have some innovation, but they would like to have this kind of coalition.
You're going to have to endorse the principles. And if they don't,
No, man, it seems for, I'm working for good or somewhere, it's difficult for me to imagine someone.
I'm afraid it will be very difficult to anticipate the real intention of people that would like to join the coalition. And in fact, I think that what we need to do is to define very precisely what they can do when they communicate. For example, for an ICO, the idea is not to forbid any kind of ICO, but to pretend that this is an ICO backed by the coalition.
Yeah, that's, I mean, I think we can't, I totally agree with what you're saying, but there are some explicit things, like a clear abuse of their affiliation, and those can be very clearly articulated. And then the other thing, though, is I think the main point is if we state that, you know, somewhere these are the values, then we're not going to be able to view what they're having. But this is open anyways. And so the only potential would be where they could maybe have an agenda and promote it in a certain sense, but it's in an open and transparent environment. So the risk is really not that great.
Cut it off at the path,
Yeah.
on the main website saying things like bold letters, we don't support ICOs, and whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, other than legitimate ones where it's co-op, green power, and they tokenized it. Go ahead, you want to do that? That's what we're trying to help you do, but we're not promoting anybody.
There are positive externalities to being involved in this, and that's a part of why people will join. You get to engage with people, learn, and what have you. And I don't think we want to preclude people from having self-interest associated with public interest when they're engaged in this. But when they're acting, they shouldn't have some hidden agenda or anything like that. You know, that's, I think,
very clear.
Yeah.
Well, this is why they vote.
Yeah.
And then we'll be told whether they can do it or not.
Yeah, why join? Well, to get to meet colleagues who are likewise interested in having harmonized, what have you, way of using climate and blockchain. I mean, there are things like this that serve their interests and serve the public's interests because it's a public good. Great, you know. If they're in there for the public good and benefit from the public good, hey, that's all we can expect.
We know that going together will go farther.
Yeah.
So, who's in favor of adjourning the meeting? Subject to any last closing
Adjourning
remarks?
to a beer or what?
Wow.
Yeah, beer is good. Some
Hey,
inspiration.
excuse me, Tom.
Yes, Alistair.
Yeah, just a final point. Yeah, I know that you're all going to be, unfortunately can't be with you, but yeah, I was just wondering whether someone or you will be able to get us some documents or discussion notes to circulate around, so that all of us, including those who are not here today, will give some serious considerations in the next couple of weeks.
Very good point, Alistair. Perhaps it didn't come through the audio well. So I've been voluntold to prepare the meeting minutes and some of the supporting, pictures on the flip charts and so on. So I'm going to commit to creating a draft by the end of this week because I have to fly back to Canada and I've got time. I'm going to share that with Tina of ILB, who's agreed to help me make sure that's nice and clean and presentable as a draft for circulation for everybody who's on the communications list.
Yeah, I guess might be Una or Chao Yi, Alexi, who are not here today, may have some different perspective, maybe some excellent input to shape these ideas a little further. So I guess it would be good that we can do some kind of consultation with them. Yeah, particularly any people with money, make sure that they're happy to sponsor us.
Totally agree. Yeah, and that's what I meant by the wider communications list. Anybody who's been contacted, even whether or not they've been signed up to be an interested participant at this point, want to try to encourage their input as well. I'm sure it'd be valuable.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Alistair. Joseph, thanks for hanging in there with us this whole time and getting up early on the Pacific Coast. Do you have any last comments or goodbyes?
Yeah, just wanted to thank you very much, Tom, and thank you everybody there for all of this. It's really exciting. It's great to get everybody in a forum to hash some of this stuff through, some of the easy stuff and some of the trickier stuff. So bravo, all. This is what we're here for. And I guess I just I think the sooner the better. I think the meetings in January would be a great time to have a little bit of this here, and we don't have to have it be a huge splash. We can maybe do a big thing at one of the more landmark climate conferences, but we can get the thin edge of the wedge of this coalition out there and get moving. I don't think that hinders us. So thanks very much.
I agree with you. Thanks again, Joseph. And thanks, Alistair, also for staying with us the whole time. Okay. Motion to adjourn the meeting? Any opposed? Thank you. All right. Thanks, everyone, very much. And thanks again, Miroslav, for organizing the online meeting.
Thanks, Tom, for calling the meeting.
And those two are still online.